and like all the weird noises. That
When a fringe position comes up, a fringe position should remain a fringe position. When a fringe position comes up, everybody in love should go, that's retarded, and walk away from it. But that's not what happens. What happens is a fringe position comes up, and at the very least right now in social media, it gets overwhelming support. And then Republicans come up and they go, look at that thing. We need to make legislation. Our politicians need to talk about this. It needs to go on Fox News. And on the left, you want to go, that's a fringe position. But everybody on the right is looking at you like you're an insane person because it might be a fringe position that's advocated for by a few amount of people, but it's defended by a ton. That's the issue. What has to be removed.
Please do not support the upcoming Hogwarts Legacy game. Friends, colleagues, cohorts, the whole lot of you, I'm asking you very sincerely, please do not stream it. Don't make YouTube videos about it, don't buy it, and don't bloody pre-order it. The reason being is that you may not be aware that by supporting this title, you are essentially aligning yourself with some really heinous transphobic values. J.K. Rowling, aka Joanne, has made it extremely clear that they see the success of this title as being vindication of their transphobic views. That, by this title doing well, that means that they were correct. And honestly, you just have to look on the Steam forums to see the kind of people that are cheering for this game. Please don't be among them. If you weren't aware of all this, I'll do a longer video after this to explain a bit more of the nuances, but I just had to say, please don't support this game. Please.
How come you can't blue pill Sneeko?
It takes a while, okay?
How many more times do you need to interact with him before that would happen? I don't understand.
I mean, it takes like months, right?
To take a pill? Months. How come some people get radicalized overnight with the red pill? I don't understand why this blue pill, this antidote, is taking so long.
Because they're usually in a state where they're just waiting for somebody to come by and sell them bullshit. But as soon as they've got the first bullshit salesman, it takes them a long time to buy somebody else's. So they've...
Well, you're selling bullshit, so...
Good one. Well, if it's all the same shit, then what do you care if Sneeko gets blue pilled or not?
I don't think that you're capable of doing it. I think Pixie and I could, though.
Yeah, right. Good one. I don't think.
Why?
I don't think that there's enough lip injections between the both of you to make him care enough. But nice try.
I mean, just Pilly things could be there, and I think she has enough to compensate for this.
Okay, first of all, I don't know what you said it cut out, but that's good because we don't insult just Pearly things here. She's our new red pill queen. But secondly, how is she going to help you when she's red pill?
We could blue pill her too.
Okay.
We've got lots of pills.
Sure. Okay. Good luck. I believe in you.
Dispensary. Okay. We'll do what you can't do.
Okay. Well, then go get him. Ask him for a debate. I could probably set it up, actually. Actually, if you wanted to, I bet all three of us could probably go to Sneeko's. Are you allowed to say where you are right now, or?
Yeah, we'll sit on either side of him and ask him to explain the Matrix to us.
Yeah, that sounds good. Get some alcohol. Act real bimbo-y.
I'm straight edge. I don't drink. I'm like okay. You degens, but good. I could babysit you guys while you do that.
Maybe. Actually, that sounds like a fun time. We might do this. I'll think about it. Okay. Oh, and we'll be on Rumble too. So.
Sounds good.
Hell yeah.
Oh, good. Yes. Listen.
You like it?
No. I'm glad that Pixie's here because I've been wanting to pick Destiny's brain about Hogwarts Legacy, and the timing could not be better.
Oh no!
Pixie, how shit faced are you? Are you able to have this conversation?
Oh no, wait.
Aaron,
Pixie's not on Twitter doing the thing, is she? Is she doing
Aaron,
the thing?
Aaron, take the booze away from her, okay?
I already confiscated it a long time ago.
Okay.
On Aaron.
All right, so I need you to drink some Pedialyte or something sober up real quick.
Is Pixie doing that? Is she on the cringe Hogwarts shit?
Well,
what is the cringe take on this? I don't understand.
That people are like losing their mind over people buying a Harry Potter game because they think it's like ushering in the second Auschwitz for the trans people.
Well, then to clarify, then we both might be on the cringe take, okay? Two different flavors of cringe. You can provide some clarity here and some perspective, okay? Now, Pixie, do you want to lay it out or do you want me to?
Okay, I'll give a short summary. I just think you should pirate things because pirating things is based, and I feel like...
Why is pirating things based?
You not watch Pirates of the Caribbean?
Well, then you're just stealing from people that are trying to like make a living, like making games and media.
No, you did not just say that. Do you think downloading is stealing?
You're depriving them of money. I mean, you can call it whatever word you want, but they're making less money. They're not gonna be able to pay people to like work on this shit.
The preview of every film I've ever watched says that piracy is not a victimless crime.
Yeah, you wouldn't steal a car. You wouldn't steal a movie. You wouldn't steal, you know, your your mom's virginity, like whatever it is.
Jesus.
You know.
I'd love to steal your mom's virginity. I really would if I could make that happen.
Wait, don't hide behind irony. Do you
one
think
of
that
my
it has
stories
no
now,
impact
so.
whatsoever?
No, okay.
No.
No. Make
Okay,
Aaron answer.
I'm
Wait, no,
gonna-
stop,
hang
stop,
on.
stop, stop, no, stop. I want Aaron to answer for real, one time in her fucking life. Answer a question instead of trying to gigasoy your way out of it. Do you think that if everybody just fucking pirated shit, there'd be no impact on markets, on the ability?
There absolutely would, but I'm saying.
Okay,
that
cool.
even
All
if
right, then we agree. Cool, we agree.
Hey,
No, that's okay. You don't have to say anything. We agree. That's cool. Okay,
Not the end of my argument, though.
that's good. That's
Because
fine.
even if downloading did hurt sales, and therefore like laborers or workers, like you're saying, that wouldn't make it unethical. Because libraries and like formerly video stores, right? Neither of which you pay per rental hurt sales too. But is it unethical to use libraries?
Hold on. Before I seriously answer that, are you comparing libraries to pirating video games or media?
Nope. I just asked you a question as to whether or not you think it's unethical to use libraries.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool.
Because they originally purchased the product, right?
Well, yeah, because companies have
Yeah.
usually made a decision
Yeah.
to like make these things available for public
Right.
consumption at a publicly funded taxpayer library. I think that's fine, but that's in no way comparable to
Okay.
fucking pirating media.
Well, then, since Pixie did not sober up enough in time to lay out this situation, I'm going to do it. Okay, so part of my New Year's resolution was to kind of be less guarded in terms of like talking about things on Twitter when I don't have a fully committed opinion yet. Okay. So she made this tweet on Twitter, which I thought was interesting. She said, "Look, I think the only ethical way to consume Harry Potter Legacy is to pirate it."
Okay.
Now, I have no interest in the game because I'm not number one, I'm not a video gamer, and number two, everything in like live action or like anything outside the books in Harry Potter have sucked since Prisoner of Azkaban, the film, came out like 2004.
How can you not like the Harry Potter films?
Fuck.
I disagree. You're just you're so soy.
Well, I'm soy.
You're
What?
so
No,
soy.
Wait a minute. If I were soy, I would be shitting on the books. The books are amazing.
The films were fine.
No, they are not.
Oh
no.
my god.
They
How old
were
are you
the
again?
first three. The
The
31.
first three? Yeah, you're my age. Those films
Yes.
are hype. Everybody liked the film. Oh my god.
No.
Here's
okay. No. Here. I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tell me why.
I'll tell you why. Because I like a good villain, and Ray Fiennes as Voldemort was terrible. Ruined the character. Yes, I'm gonna say yes. And like all the weird noises.
What?
110%. 100%.
How can you stumble into I'm gonna be honest, I had an uphill fight, okay? And you just like tripped all over yourself. That's like saying, you know, I would have liked Harry Potter, but Alan Rickman did such a horrible job as Snape, I just couldn't get into it. Like, how could you possibly
Alan Rickman was incredible as Snape. Listen, it's not the same thing, Destiny, because it took one performance can be terrible and another performance can be
Ralph
extraordinary.
Fiennes did a fine job. He's an awesome actor. He did a great job as Voldemort. He's spooky,
He is
creepy,
incredible.
weird guy. He did it. Oh my god, sorry.
He
Okay,
was
go ahead.
absolutely weird, but he's an incredible actor. Did you ever watch Schindler's List? He was an amazing villain in Schindler's List. He was a Nazi, so you'd probably want to get chicken and waffles with him. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, listen.
Okay.
Here's the thing. He was weird. If you compare Voldemort in the books to Voldemort in the films, like Voldemort in the books is menacing and terrifying. He's not played for laughs at all. Do you remember in the film when he like fucking hugged Draco Malfoy as the world's most that was a more awkward hug than what Mike from PA did to that girl on the street. It was so cringe. It was
Which
terrible.
part are you talking about when he hugged him? Are you talking about when he's asking
Deathly
people to come-
Hallows.
Deathly
Hallows.
It's supposed to be awkward. He's not showing real love or kindness or affection to
No
anybody.
No shit, but it wasn't like creepy awkward. It was just like, wow, that's super like we
You're just,
You have
oh
me
my
all
god,
covered
wow.
better.
Okay,
He was-
this
he
is
was
great. My
Voldemort in
audience is
5
going to think I have
films.
amazing media takes after this. Let's keep going, okay? Go
Oh
ahead.
my god, wait, Lycan,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
go-
What'd you say, buddy?
That was one moment at the last 10
Oh, here
minutes
we
of
go.
the last film. There were 5 appearances of Voldemort throughout the movies. You have to qualify this better than that one moment.
Even in the
he was menacing, he was viciously evil, and he was very well.
No. Even in the very first, like his first major scene in the graveyard, he was making all kinds of weird noises. Like if you go to YouTube right now and look up Voldemort weird noises, they've got compilation after compilation
wow.
Yeah,
after
if you watch
compilation
that
after
shit,
compilation.
there's also
I
a
mean-
10-hour. There's a
Yeah.
10-hour compilation of the Draco hug where they edit it so it's like this really awkward long.
Yeah, but
scene
this
with
is
the
actually
feet.
multiple. This is multiple scenes,
Okay,
multiple
my
weird
bad, I
noises.
understand. So you watched a YouTube video essay. I was probably talking about this for 10 minutes. So this
No,
was
I've
finished.
never.
That's fine. Okay, I
I've
gotcha.
never watched a Harry Potter film video essay. I don't know what you do in your spare time.
Okay.
So listen, I'm just saying.
Uh-huh.
Why are we? What, Aaron? Why did you not like rein us in earlier? We're already on like 7 tangents over here.
There's 3 millennial men in this room, okay, and the Gigasoy levels are off the charts, especially since you guys started talking about Harry Potter.
I just dared to offer a perfectly valid opinion, and Steven like flipped his desk. Unbelievable.
How
It's
can you not
invalid.
like the
You've
movie?
not qualified this.
God, you're soying out, dude.
Yeah.
Soying out. I just
are.
offered.
Josiah's sewing out
Just say
here.
you didn't like it. Just say that you didn't like.
Oh yeah, no. It is.
No,
I-
just say you're virtue signaling to make all of your trans followers happy. That's fine. I'll accept that.
Okay, listen,
That's okay.
buddy. I've got a grand total of like only 500 followers on Twitter. I doubt any of them are trans. And
300 of them are
if they
trans,
were,
and you're trying to- yeah.
if they were, wouldn't I say that I hated the books? I love the books. The books are amazing.
Well, that
They're
just
not
wouldn't
good.
be believable. But okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Where were we at in this conversation before you?
All right, so we're going back to Pixie's tweet. Okay, so she said that the only way, and sorry to throw you under the bus here, Pixie, but I really wanted to talk about this because I still don't know where I fall. She made the tweet: the only ethical way to consume Hogwarts Legacy is to pirate it. Now, my first instinct was, I don't think that's. I think if you really wanted an optimal ethical way, you couldn't consume Hogwarts Legacy, and pirating it would also be unethical because it's theft. Okay.
Wow.
So to me, if you're really gonna like take a strong pro-trans position and really like go for the optimal ethics, you would just boycott it entirely. You wouldn't partake of somebody's labor without compensating them. And so anyway, I've read some articles since then about like how, you know, the video game industry is mostly like the developers, the engineers, the artists, that they're all paid on a contract basis. So it's not like sales would directly hurt them as I initially expected. But I'm still trying to figure out if number one, if you can ethically consume Hogwarts Legacy. Number two, if you can't ethically consume Hogwarts Legacy, is it that unethical in the grand scheme of things? Like, is it basically the equivalent of shopping at Walmart or Amazon? You know, technically bankrolling institutions or people that you find unethical, but for convenience or interest, we do it every day. Does that make sense?
I mean, it's going to depend on whether the media itself is unethical or whether the creator is unethical, right? That's going to be the big determining factor, would be my guess.
I don't know, like, yeah, that would be a big determining factor. My biggest problem with buying Hogwarts Legacy is that, like, J.K. Rowling, I like 99% sure, maybe I'm wrong or misinterpreted something, like explicitly stated that whenever people support her work or she sees like a surge of support when it comes to her work, she takes it as like evidence that she's right and she continue her like trans like tirade or whatever.
Like
So it doesn't-
validation.
Yeah, so she sees that she's explicitly said that like she sees it as like validating. So my problem is not even like, oh, she's getting more money because you bought her product. My problem is that like, oh, look, a lot of people are buying my product, therefore I should keep doing anti-trans things. Well, I don't think the CEO of Walmart or like Target or whatever fucking company has made explicit claims like that they see people shopping at Walmart as like
An endorsement of their views and stuff.
yeah.
Well, she doesn't just get to assert that though. I mean, I'm for the death of the author and like separating the art from the artist. So like I don't know that people are any more endorsing her views than anybody else's when they consume somebody else's products. Or,
Yeah,
like,
I'm not buying that.
LA.
That would be that take would require you to audit the media you consume to such an insane level. Like shit,
Not
like
just media, any product that you purchase, right? You're saying you're necessarily endorsing the like creators views or the
not even the creator's views, but like the original creator's views. Like
Yeah, because she's not involved with the development, right? I mean, she gets royalties from the IP, but I thought they said that she wasn't consulted for the game. She
or
played
even
no
like ignore
role.
that. Like, let's say I wanted to go see the Ender's Game movie because I really liked Asa Butterfield as an actor.
Right.
But like I find out that like the author of the original book had negative opinions about gay people.
he is
Right. Orson Scott Card. Yeah, he's a homophobe.
Oh my god, it's almost like that's the reason I gave that example. Good job, guys.
I know. Why did you pretend like he wasn't?
Sure, but I'm saying that like I wouldn't There's no, like, you would have to follow back an unbelievable chain of accountability to audit your media preferences at that point. It would be absurd, in my opinion.
Well, and that's part of the reason why this is kind of interesting for me, because I remember when the Ender's Game movie came out and I saw it, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was bothered that I went and saw it. But to me, it was like, number one, I was interested in the movie. Number two, I didn't go see the movie because Orson Scott Card is homophobic. Number three, there's nothing about Ender's Game, from what I remember, that has any sort of like homophobic allegory or messaging.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like easy to separate those things.
Yeah, for sure.
But then again, I'm thinking about it though in the context of, so that's okay. Just follow me here, all right? So then a couple of years later, this is kind of similar. Not about consumption per se, but like association. So, do you remember a couple of years ago when ACAB was all the rage among certain leftists?
Yep.
Okay, well, I've got two good friends who are cops, and so I couldn't, from just personal experience, I'm like, well, I don't accept ACAB because I know not all cops are bastards. And it was explained to me, no. So they're bastards in the sense like they're not personally pieces of shit, but they're bastards in the sense that they're part of a corrupt institution. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, then aren't I? Because I bankroll them. I pay my taxes. I am funding, American law enforcement, all these. How far do you move this back? Mm-hmm. And you mentioned this the other day in a conversation, which I thought was interesting, which is people don't want to consider themselves unethical or bad or whatnot, so they tend to gerrymander their ethics, like in a certain way, which absolves them. So then my thinking is maybe it is true that if you patronize Amazon, or if you pay your taxes, or if you consume Hogwarts Legacy, is it possible to consider these things, at least on some small level, technically unethical? It's just that, like, you can't live you can't live a life devoid of unethical conduct, right? Just given
the problem is
various...
we have to leave some room for society to function where everybody doesn't have to have 100% like coinciding political viewpoints on everything. Like that's dysfunctional, right? The amount of like auditing you would have to do for all of the shit that you consume would just be unbelievable.
But when it's one like, but if you know for sure that that's the case, like in the case of this game or whatever, do you think?
Well, but what do we know in the case of this game?
Well, we just know that J.K. Rowling, like, it's not like other companies where they say, oh yeah, no other company thinks if you buy their product, it means that they should continue doing whatever fucked up thing they're doing.
Yeah, but would you apply, let's say like the inventor of the Kleenex came out and he said, I made Kleenex because they help you like, do things that gay people never could, which is keep yourself clean. Like, let's say you started saying shit like that. And every time somebody buys a Kleenex, I think they support my viewpoint. Like, would you stop using Kleenex? Like,
it seems Kleenex has more of like a practical, like day-to-day use.
I don't think that matters.
In an actual world,
does the utility of the item matter at all?
I would say it does.
No.
Like I don't.
Well, especially with a product like that, there's other brands that you could choose, and like you're not just boycotting that. You would like go for their competitor, and that would.
But would you do that though? You would actually stop using Kleenex if the inventor of the Kleenex came out and said that?
No. Just because, but I don't find like product consumption boycotts to be an effective way of like.
This is the ad hom way that I completely and totally shut this argument down. If you genuinely believe that like the consumption of Harry Potter, the video game, is like evil or immoral in some way, that's fine. But it is impossible to have any consistent set of moral principles where consuming that piece of media is unethical, but remaining on Twitter to talk about it is. There's no possible way you can believe that, because whatever you think of fucking J.K. Rowling, you must think Elon Musk is like 10 times fucking worse, and to continue to support a company that he is directly bankrolling, directly profiting from, and directly has a financial motive tied up in it. There's no consistent way to have those positions, I don't think.
I think, first of all, I disagree, but second of all, I don't even think, I disagree on multiple grounds, but the first one being, I don't think it's unethical to consume the Harry Potter video game. I think it's unethical to like, or not, I even like hesitate at saying the word unethical, but whatever, buy it basically. I think if you download it illegally or whatever, like you're not showing that surge of support that she's asking for basically, or that she wants when she says that she should continue her like tirade of like anti-trans like legislation and movement.
How much harm do you think J.K. Rowling herself is having on the trans community?
I think in the UK, like pretty broad, she's become, at least to my understanding, like the face of like the anti-trans movement there.
And you think that stopping this video game from being successful is going to have any semblance of an impact on that?
I think it's not. there's like a certain way to phrase it, which I'm not equipped to phrase it right now properly. But basically, I think it does have
That's
an
the booze.
I think it does have an impact in making her less motivated, if that makes sense. I think if like this game is like wildly extra popular, as she said before, oh, that's surge of support, that means that I'm right, that I should continue, I should make it even more because look how many people are supporting me. Like I should put even more money to this cause. Well, if this game is not as supported or whatever, then it's like, okay, she's still going to be involved in this, but it's not going to give her like an extra spurt of motivation or whatever.
I think you are severely overhyping the amount of effect that's going to have on her. On
I don't think we should.
Her
I don't think.
feelings
Wait,
to
wait,
do
wait, wait,
this.
wait. I don't think we should argue the effect. That's a boring conversation because if the effect changed dramatically one way or another, I think we would all still feel the same. We should probably talk about the principle of it, right?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like to the point that fucking Ruminate was making, is that
Fucking
you know
Ruminate.
these people don't get paid extra by the game having sales, but it absolutely is going to have an impact on their career. This being, it's a best-selling game now already, right? This game out and it comes out, and it's incredibly highly reviewed, really well done, has a lot of longevity. You know, these people's careers who worked on it are going to have a serious impact. So
Here, okay.
sure.
Without let's back up even more. Okay, broadly speaking, I think looking at the principle of things is interesting. So here is an experience that I had. So long time ago, people thought that I was racist, etc., and they decided that they were going to try to boycott my streams. I said, "Don't watch your streams, blah blah blah." But they immediately moved on to the next step, and they said, "Okay, well, forget boycotting Destiny. We're going to boycott as sponsors. We're going to email them to let them know that we're not happy with the decision." It's like, okay, fine. You want to super cancel me? Go for it. So they started emailing my sponsors. When my sponsors wouldn't buckle, they were like, okay, we're going to start emailing the clients of his sponsors. And that it's a weird feeling because I'm like, let's say that it would have gone farther than that. Like, would you start emailing like clients of sponsors to apply pressure on things? Like that type of idea where it's like, are we going to start to boycott Universal Studios because they fund Harry Potter movies and they probably like contributed a lot to J.K. Rowling's wealth? Are we going to start boycotting like everything that's tangentially involved? What if a game comes out and the creator is like totally fine, but like the lead story director or like the lead artist or the CEO?
You're worried about like an infinite regression of kind? Like
Not an infinite regression, but just like as part of a democratic society, we are going to have some viewpoints in our society that we don't like. Not ones that we're just like, oh, this kind of sucks, but ones that we're like, damn, I actually really don't like this. And we have to accept that they're going to exist and we're going to live with them and we're going to try to function in society and advocate what we want through democratic means or otherwise. But the idea that like we're going to just like try to boycott or destroy everything that has any disagreement with us whatsoever, I don't think that works in society.
You're describing peak liberalism, no? Like,
I'm
vote
describing
with your
what?
wallet. That is like a liberal principle to vote with your wallet. Or no?
Um,
It can.
Like people attempting to shape social values through the market, through market mechanisms, through their monetary purchases or like endorsements and whatnot.
It can be, but doing it in a social sense is a little bit different, I think.
Wait a minute.
In a social sense, this applies to like businesses and markets.
No. If somebody produces content that you don't like and you decide not to consume that, I consider that voting with your wallet. But if there is socio-cultural pressure to make people stop supporting something because there's somebody associated with a project, that's not like an economics, like, oh, you're voting with your wallet. That's like a way more of a social phenomenon than any kind of economically expressed phenomenon.
Well, haven't boycotts in the past been in part social phenomenon where you've tried to encourage others to participate in the boycott as well? Like, it's not just people saying, I'm going to pick at this company. It's also, I'm going to pick it and try to get you to pick at this company as well. Like, there is...
No, I mean, no, I'm not saying that the matter involved isn't just that you're trying to get other people to boycott things. It's when the thing itself isn't even bad. It's the people associated with it or somebody associated with it. I think that
Gotcha.
when you get into degrees of separation, I think you start to get into really weird places that are not good for society, in my opinion.
Well, the one of the question that's been, again, on the back of my brain specifically pertaining to this that I'm hoping somebody could answer is, like, I take your point as in terms of having a functioning civilization, we have to have some degree of tolerance as far as like other people's viewpoints. But my question is, can you consider the thing that I walked away from with Pixie's tweet was, I don't know if there is an ethical way to consume the game, purchase or pirate. If you're a trans ally and this is really important to you in terms of like matter of fact ethical unethical behavior, there is no ethical way to consume it. But I was also thinking of the various ethical compromises I make throughout my day-to-day life, again including like Amazon. That's an easy one. They have horrendous business practices, but I wear the fuck out of Amazon all the time. But if someone asked me, hey, Ruminate, do you think it's unethical to patronize Amazon? I would probably say, yeah, on at least some technical small level, yes, I consider it unethical, but I do it anyway because I don't think that it's, some actions are not as unethical as others. So my question to you, since you like swim in this world of philosophy and I don't, do you agree that people do things for convenience all the time that you consider unethical, or can it not be
No, I think
unethical because it's convenient?
No, we have to draw some. It can't be the case that our society necessitates unethical behavior to function. That would suck. That sounds like a shitty system of ethics. I think that the problem is just that I think. What?
Sorry, continue.
I was going to say, I think that there are some social problems. There are some, to quote Zizek, there are some things that you don't want to be debating every day. Okay.
Will you say it like he does?
No. Yeah. There are some things that we don't want. Yeah. Okay. There are some things we don't need to debate every day, right? If somebody came out with a piece of media and they were pro, and the media like featured something, it's like, okay, this is probably something that we can pressure people away from. But trans people are on like the cutting edge of social phenomenon, right? This is like state of the art social values that is very new, very fresh. There is not consensus on it, even in far left places. Medically, it's still incredibly murky. Everything is very on edge. So to pretend that all of society needs to be lockstep on this cutting edge part of social theory, and we're about to start boycotting large parts of people's childhoods over it, is insane to me, right? If you think of the average millennial, Harry Potter made up like fucking 15% of their childhood, and all of the memories and everything associated with it are incredibly positive, and you want to take away that in exchange for trans people that introduce pronoun anxiety and want to talk about trans sports, and it's like the leading fucking social cause that like conservatives and Republicans are pushing on, like, that's just a bizarre fight to have, in my opinion. If we were talking about like homophobia or something, sure, but cutting edge social issues, I don't know.
I don't know if you want
to. Like that's what the intention is here. I think there's people who boycott it who will readily admit that like the media is good. It's not that they don't want to play the game. It's not that they didn't enjoy Harry Potter for years. It's just that they can, in good conscience, prioritize that preference over their concern for this demographic. No.
That's fine for the individual to do, but again, when you start pushing the social, as if it's expected,
that's not what we're talking about here. If individuals want to, that's fine, but the tweets going out are like, if you buy this, you hate trans people. That's where the feelings are right now.
Well, and to be clear, that's not what Pixie said. You know what I mean?
No, that's fine if she's not saying that, but like that's like I've seen. I think Brianna Wu tweeted that. I think a couple other large trans people tweeted that, where it's like, yeah, this is if you do this, you hate trans people.
So, like once you know something about, because like. People, like we were saying, people consume products from companies who are headed by CEOs and like rich moguls who have abhorrent social and political views.
Or the companies themselves. Hey, I'm sorry, just as a point. Or even the companies themselves have known her. Like again, Amazon's a great example. I mean, they're
business practices
right.
And stuff like that. But when people say like you ought not buy XYZ product or whatever, ought kind of implies can. And it's like with the Kleenex example. Kleenex are kind of like almost like, or maybe like toilet paper would be like a day-to-day necessity that you kind of can't avoid consuming, as opposed to Hogwarts Legacy. Like you need to consume Hogwarts Legacy. I think this is why people thought this would be a good boycott, because if you don't consume Hogwarts Legacy or download it or buy it, you'll be okay. No?
It's fine to call for a boycott. The problem is that there's the social pressure on top of it. You are now expecting, you are ostracizing, you are tearing down other people for saying, well, you can boycott it, but I'm not going to. That's the conversation that would be fine to have if it was, hey, I don't think you should buy this.
Are you and Destiny taking the position that it would even be okay for people on social media to try to encourage others to either boycott or pirate Hogwarts? Well, maybe not pirate because it get
I'm against pirating, so I'd be against that. But yeah,
but that there would be, you two would be fine if people called or tried to encourage others to boycott Hogwarts Legacy, but didn't include such harsh social consequences. If you don't boycott, you are, again, a piece of shit, or you're actively aiding and abetting, trans genocide or whatever. It's like so. It's not that okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for Steven, but I'm fine with that. If someone says, "Hey, I think we should boycott this game," I don't give a shit. But there is that huge amount of social pressure being tied to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just like it's like one of those weird things where we like tear down statues and rename things because somebody had like a problematic view at some point in time. That whole idea, like there are going to be people in society that have views that in the past or today are problematic. I don't think that means we have to not consume everything from them. Like, we should be able to simultaneously enjoy a piece of media while recognizing like the problematic views that somebody has, in my opinion.
Okay, so does this apply to things that we have generally more consensus about? So like, would
No,
you ever...
I already gave that example. If there are things we have ultra consensus about, like if somebody comes out and they're like pro rape and they make like content that's like pro rape, or even if the content isn't pro rape, then
that, like anti-Semitism, like Kanye West. Okay, Kanye, I love Hitler, and like I'm a Nazi or whatever, you know, West or yay.
Yeah. Enough about you, Aaron. What's Kanye said? What's he said?
Well, he's like expressed support for like Nazism and like.
I was making a joke that you were saying you love Hitler. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
A good one.
Aha.
So from there, like, would you like? How do you feel about people buying that, Steven? At this point?
Yeah, I mean, like if they I think if they want to personally boycott it, that's fine. The social pressure just gets really weird to me. I think that's.
Do you think that there's a different, like, what do you think about somebody who doesn't just go and buy Kanye's merch, but they like actually kind of support it or endorse it? They never support or endorse the anti-Semitism, but like conveniently right after he comes out with these anti-Semitic stances, then all of a sudden some people, like certain people, are like the biggest Kanye stans. Do you think that there's anything suspect about that sort of behavior? Or you think it's like...
Well, I mean, yeah, that makes it sound like they liked the anti-Semitism. That's probably what I would assume.
Do you think the same could happen with the video game? So, like, after J.K. Rowling...
No. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think so.
Do you think I'm a bad person?
I do. I do like
Thank
him.
you. Do you think I'm a bad person if I don't skip past Bump and Grind when it comes on my Spotify playlist and I give it a full play and that goes to R. Kelly's account?
Oh, absolutely. You're just as bad as R. Kelly himself. You may as well have pissed on that girl yourself.
Yep.
Base
There you go.
humor
Now
to
it's
avoid,
a non-meme answer.
to avoid answering a real question. Nice.
Steven, well, hang on. I'm confused here because Aaron brought up a good example of anti-Semitism in which there's, I would imagine, more consensus about how bad that is compared to, I guess, the trans issue right now in terms of like the social meta. And you're saying even with anti-Semitism or like known anti-Semites, it's okay. I
think it would have to be something that's like way beyond the pale for me to consider it. So like anti-Semitism, probably not. Kanye West saying like we need to kill every Jew, I think I would look, yeah, that would probably be different. At that point, I'm probably not playing Kanye West anymore. And if people want to boycott him, I'd probably like publicly support that. Or I would like look weird at people like this guy's out here right now saying he wants to kill Jewish people. But like I think it would have to be a social thing that's like way beyond the pale of like obviously fucked for me to care at that point, or not for me to care, but for me to be like a full-on boycott.
How do you determine when there's consensus surrounding like a social issue? Like, would you say even with like equal marriage, homophobia, would you say like that's kind of like a settled issue between like the Supreme Court case and like social attitudes towards gay people? Do you think that there's enough consensus around that?
Yeah, I think the gay stuff is pretty settled. I think
the gay stuff.
Yeah. Like if stuff around like gay people, I think that's like we're beyond that stuff. I think I don't think very many Republicans are like fighting against gay people.
Gallup
anymore.
says about 70% of the U.S. support same-sex marriage.
That's insane.
Yeah. Now 61, according to Pew Research, say the same-sex marriage legalization is good for society. So 70% say that whatever,
that's
we
still
can have it.
That's like 30% of Republicans probably in that poll. So
yeah. So I guess then again, going all the way back to my original question, you're not open to the idea that we just all engage. Like, okay, let me use my Amazon example. Do you think it's unethical for me to partake of Amazon? Given
I don't have problems with most of Amazon's business practices. I don't know where the unethical shit comes from, where people cry about Amazon. So I don't care about Amazon.
I think it's the factory worker.
Factory worker. Every single
Piss
product.
and all that
I
stuff,
don't believe the piss in a bottle shit is shit. I don't believe in most of that shit.
Okay.
So, Steven, if you knew that if you're at Walmart and you're presented with two different brands, one you know for sure uses child labor, sweatshop labor, has unethical business practices,
He would pay more for it, 100%.
Yeah,
no, I'm going to equalize the price. I'm going to say like, okay, it's like the brands offer the same products, the same T-shirts, the same color. One has unethical business practices, one does not. Do you think that there's no distinction between these things because you're already saying there's not really such a thing as ethical consumption anyway?
I never said there's no such thing as ethical consumption. I'm just saying that what would be ethical or unethical is going to vary based on different things. But the thing, if it was all else equal, I'm going to go with the more like ethical consumption. Of course, I'm going to go with the thing that was probably made better. I would probably even pay a little bit more for it. I would say.
Oh, I was saying that you would pay more for the thing that was made by child sweatshops.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
good one. But like again, that has to do with the difference between the product itself versus the creator of the product, right? If like talking about something made with sweatshops versus something that was like made with a person that supports sweatshops is the difference between J.K. Rowling supporting Harry Potter versus Harry Potter like in the world they're transphobic, right?
What do you mean Harry Potter in the world they're transphobic?
Like if in the game there was transphobia, I think that boycott becomes way more fair. If the
Right, that
game
the
was
lore
like, yeah, you can
in the
choose
IP.
two genders here, and Draco Malfoy is joking about how there was a trans student last year and we used a curse on them and killed them because we hate trans people, and all of Gryffindor laughed along because they hate like then I'd be like, okay, yeah, if you want to like socially push the boycott this, like this is pretty insane. I could agree with that. But that's the difference between the thing itself and just the creator of the thing. I think those are two different things.
Okay, so if you think that, then do you think that it's not good for kids to play games that depict like murder and like violence or stuff like that?
You're gonna have to use your brain a little bit on that one. That's such an easy question. I can't even believe you just asked me that.
I'm just asking you because I feel like it naturally extends from your logic.
It doesn't naturally extend at all. There's a huge difference between like glorifying and pushing for a particular social norm in a thing versus like depicting a certain thing. Call of Duty's goal is not to get you to normalize attitudes of murdering other people in society, but like certain social values can be transmitted in games that are trying to normalize or push those social views in society.
Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird is replete with racism, but the purpose
Yeah.
of it is to refute it, not celebrate.
Nobody plays Call of Duty to like learn how to murder people. Like it's a totally different thing, I think.
Okay. Interesting.
Hmm.
Why are you guys not, or like, what is your thing with like being anti-piracy or whatever?
Because it's theft. Like with I'm at a loss for something I can.
It's opportunity cost of
equate
income.
this
If you
to.
can't afford things, I mean, I pirated everything when I was growing up because I didn't, or at least after I got out of high school. But I mean, if you can't afford it and you're just not paying something because you're trying to stick it to J.K. Rowling, like you're just over the developers and everybody that works in the game. You're not over J.K.
Aren't the
Rowling.
developers already like paid?
I mean, they might have been paid for the particular work on that game, but they're going to be less likely to find work in the future. That studio is going to be less likely to find work if the game doesn't sell well, right?
Yeah,
Right.
initially I thought that some of the participants were, contractors and the others were like paid a salary, and that this could, a reduction in sales could lead to like layoffs or payroll reductions, stuff like that. But from the little research I've been able to do, apparently that's not how the video game industry is structured anymore. Most of these people are compensated for the project.
Wait.
They're not,
No. This is very easy logic 101. Of course that's how it works. If
Well,
a studio like makes a game and it sells like shit, that studio is going to close down eventually. And then
No,
those people are
that's
gonna be looking
but
for
that's
new
not
work.
what I'm contesting. I'm not disagreeing with you. I was to Pixie's point. I think a lot of people, myself included, were initially under the assumption that like these people so much of their direct remuneration is tied into sales, and it's actually not. Now it could fuck them over and fuck the studio in terms of future jobs and future projects. Completely agree. But like I was under the impression, because again I don't play video games, it's like, oh shit, if the sales do poor, these people will be fired or that there will be payroll reductions or whatnot, when actually my understanding now is, according to like gamer articles and everything else, is that they're not getting bonuses tied to sales, and they're contractors who are already compensated directly for the project. Now it may shut the studio down or things like that, so no, I'm with you. But I don't think it was quite what a lot of people, or certainly what I suspected it was a couple of days ago. That
Hold on. So Pixie and you is stealing bad? Just period. Is stealing bad?
I think it depends on the outcomes and consequences.
Bullshit.
No, okay.
Unless you're
You're
talking about,
telling
well, hold on.
somebody
Unless you're about to pull some Robin Hood
feels like
shit,
a
I do not
no,
believe you.
listen, Lycan. I know this isn't full of shit because you're not gonna tell me if somebody's starving and steals like.
I
a
just
loaf
said
of
that.
bread
I
and
said so.
for it.
No. Okay, we're not talking about people starving. We're talking about.
Okay, no, but if you agree with that, then you don't think my answer to like, hey, it depends on the consequences. Is
No,
bullshit
because
or bargain.
because in most situations I'm talking about if I want to walk into your house and take something from it, is that bad? If I want to walk into a store and steal something, doesn't matter what it is, I have the money, or even if I don't, I just want it.
So
I'm
if
gonna take
you
it.
saw a young mother attempting to steal baby formula, what would you do?
Again. You guys are going to the most emotional. You were avoiding. You were avoiding.
Oh, like then you're avoiding. You're the one who's like, oh, it's bullshit.
No,
it's
of course I'm not gonna harangue a mother for stealing for kid. You know
Well,
the
you did
goddamn answer to
present it.
that.
Well, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
You
Wait a
did
minute, wait a minute.
present the initial question. The initial question you did say is stealing good or bad, and so
Sure, and then we got pedantic and started going down the
I
path
don't know
of,
how
well, this, well, that.
to clarify and understand the nuances and complexity of stealing and theft.
If I go steal a video game, that isn't fucking Harry Potter. If I go steal a video game from the store, is that bad?
are you trying to feed your child with that video game?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So
Wait,
I'm gonna just answer the question.
Like, and on that though, okay, so like, yeah, stealing is wrong generally, right? But downloading isn't stealing because if I shoplift a video game from my local video game store, nobody else can buy it. But when I download a song or a video game, nobody else loses it, and another person.
Okay,
gets
let's
it.
the word when we talk about stealing, okay? Well, stealing can mean a lot of different things. It's pretty obvious that something is being lost here. So when we talk about stealing in this case, we're talking about the opportunity cost that's lost of the potential dollars earned, right? So when you take a video game out of a store, it's not like nobody else can buy that video game, but the developers are deprived of money that they probably should have had otherwise.
Store owners deprived of
In
revenue.
the context of markets, because Lycan just asked, like, okay, what if I go into your house and steal something? Is that wrong? I thought we were just looking at it more broadly. Because now you're talking about opportunity costs and how it affects like market mechanisms and whatnot.
I'm just saying, if I make a piece of music and a million people all steal this song, even though nothing's being quote unquote stolen from me, in a way I'm being deprived of like a amount of money that I feel I probably should rightfully be mine.
So like you're saying there's more to it than just the absence of a finite physical asset that somebody else can't purchase.
Of course. What do you mean
Right,
copyright
yes,
is
okay.
built on, right?
I'm
what if
with
I
you.
steal
I'm with
somebody's
you.
idea?
I'm just clarifying for Pixie and Aaron, who are talking about like a physical copy store example. Like that we're not talking about the absence of a physical asset that would have to be replaced. We're talking about that shit. So what do you think, Aaron, Pixie?
Okay, my views on this are like kind of separate. I just want to clarify one thing before I start going on any tangents. Do these companies like keep track of or try to keep track to the best that they can of people who try to like illegally download or like amount of like bootleg like copies out there?
The
I
FBI
assume
does.
they do. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, there are organizations that do keep track of it and report it, like, hey, this video was the most downloaded video, blah blah blah, or
Yeah, and I mean, they
video.
probably tried to, but I doubt it's perfect, right? Of course.
Okay, then I feel like there's even a stronger argument to pirate not to buy it at all.
Well,
Because
no. What?
wait, let me finish my sentence. And the reason why I say this is
Yeah,
because
like it.
okay, the reason why I say this is because if you don't buy the Harry Potter game at all, then it seems like, oh, like it's a bad game or like people just are not interested in it. It's not interesting enough. Well, if people are illegally downloading it, it shows that there's a large interest. They just don't want to spend money for it for some reason.
Okay, well, that
And
wasn't.
if they're in front of a board of investors and you're like, well, during this time, there was like a shit ton of people talking about how they didn't want to give money to J.K. Rowling to support her. I feel like they'd be much more likely or more inclined to like invest in another video game from that company than if there's like no downloads at all.
Yeah, but
Right,
I don't
but that
even know if
wasn't
that
the
makes
point
for
of-
like a better society. Do I want like people investing their money into things because they agree with like the current political social dogma? I don't know. That just sounds like a shitty media environment.
And that wasn't even the point I was going for. I just wanted to get like some general idea, because I think most people agree the idea of stealing is wrong. Now, if you're Aaron and you don't think that theft is downloading is theft, well, she's immovable until we have that discussion. But what I was
And
going
you're
to
dealing
say,
with Captain Pixie, the pirate queen here, who's actively encouraging it.
Hey,
right?
it's Pirate
But
Code.
then, so let's say you both do agree that downloading is theft, and theft is wrong. Do you
I
think
don't
it's okay to do?
That's a problem. I think
No. You do. You think that if I walk into your house and steal something, it's wrong. You think if I go to a store and steal a product, it's wrong. And we're not talking about food for my
Honestly,
baby.
I think it depends on like. Well, that's the thing. You're making.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Are you one of those Hassan Sims who? I'm sorry. I'm being
Whoa.
mean. Are you one of those? Do you align with
Nancy
Hassan?
over here.
I know. Do you align with Hassan and think that people walking into CVS with a garbage bag and grabbing everything they can is fine and they shouldn't be stopped?
You said that?
Yes.
No, I don't listen to this song.
I don't listen to Hassan either. I'd love to see that clip though.
Okay.
Aaron says she watches them on mute.
Don't we all?
Looking for his muscles.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the reason like why I'm even like hesitant to answer your question, maybe I'm just too utilitarian, consequence-filled brain or whatever, is because like if somebody came into my house and stole, I don't know, an expensive diamond of mine or some shit, I don't even have diamonds, but pretend I did. And then with that diamond, they're going to feed like 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever kids, then I would be like kind of hard pressed to say like,
Sure,
oh no.
yes. Okay, so let me tell you what I'm going to get at, and then you can try to, mold your mind around the example. So, do you think it's bad to do bad? I'm sorry. Do you think it's good to do things that you would generally consider bad to people you don't like or people you think are bad?
Do I think
So
it's
let's say you do believe that theft is wrong, without going down a million qualifiers. Let's say you do think theft is wrong. Do you think it's okay to steal from people you don't like?
no, just because I don't like them. That's not
Okay.
enough.
So then why are we okay with doing something that is probably, I can't say objectively because, yeah, how that just went, that is wrong because it's someone that you don't like or that you're morally against?
Because it's not just, oh, I don't. First of all, there's a difference between I don't like someone and a moral objection
Yeah,
to
that's
what
so
someone
petty.
does.
It's not a petty opposition.
Yeah, there's a difference between like, oh, I'm not going to like help this person, or I'm gonna like kick them down because I don't like the color of their hair. I don't like that it's bleached. Versus, oh my God, this person is like literally going out there and like wanting trans people to like, let's say, like get killed, and they're like trying to pass legislation for that. Like, let's say
Okay.
extremists,
Do
right?
you
Like, obviously, there's a difference between like whether I think it's okay how to treat one versus the other.
do you think that it's bad when law enforcement tries to stack as many charges as possible against someone in order to really like, so let's say that you steal a car with some kids in it, right? And just when they they arrest you, rather than getting you for kidnapping and grand theft auto, they also try to ring you up for every red light and stop sign you ran.
Yeah, that's
Okay. Do you think that it was? Are you familiar with what happened to O.J. Simpson?
yeah. They got him for
He
like
killed
a
his
bunch of additional
ex-wife,
charges.
didn't he?
Well, no, yeah, he killed his ex-wife, but then he got off on it. But then the moment they could try to trump up some kidnapping charges on him, when he went and confronted some dude and stole back his merchandise, they
Yeah, 'cause they're
stacked everything
violating
they
the
could
spirit of the
against
law.
him.
This is like double jeopardy to me.
Well, right. So
It amounts to double jeopardy.
right. So I'm saying, like, there are people who look at that and say, nah, he fucking got away with killing his wife. Good for the police.
Yeah, that's
Right.
fucked. It's like if he really, really did that, they should be able to approve that in the court of law the first time. They need to not fumble it. The onus is on them to like really nail him the first time. And then if the state that up, then they can't just continue to like retroactively find or like get on his ass for like all these like petty other misdemeanors or whatever to try to nail him for the crime that they couldn't in the first place.
Well,
Right, so
I'm sorry,
he's-
hang on, real quick. Isn't
Yeah.
isn't this potentially a distinction between like legal ethics and I don't know what you'd call
Well,
it, like moral ethics?
moral
Like,
ethics. Yeah, I'm
That's
asking.
well,
probably,
like wouldn't like
uh,
couldn't Aaron or Pixie say, as a matter of legal ethics, that's f***ed, but because I think OJ is guilty, I'm not going to lose any sleep over police, going after him and trying to throw the book at him for stealing back his Heisman or whatever the fuck it was a few years ago.
Well, that's
Like,
what we're trying to establish. Like, if you do believe that people shouldn't, if that's wrong, and you disagree with the police doing that, I'm going to say, okay, now let's look at the JK situation. Do you think it's okay for people to steal from these developers, the development company, and all that, just because we don't like JK?
In my opinion is that it's not just because it's JK. Like I've already bit the bullet that I don't think that downloading is stealing, honestly. So I would say like it's no more moral or immoral to do it in this case than it is any other case, because I've already said that I think I'm fine with like people downloading and pirating.
I mean, my problem is I literally said it's not just because it's like, oh, JK, it's because what JK said that, or how they act when they get these like surges of support, or they see themselves getting these surges of support.
Yeah, you think it's enabling bigotry because she's gonna then use the funds from that.
Or not even just use the funds, because like, she's still rich no matter what. It's the fact that she says that whenever she sees surges of support, it's like it invigorates her to do more for anti-trans causes, right? So it's not even.
Let's say,
my
why
problem-
would you let her irrationality dominate your media consumption choices, though? Right?
Well, because her irrationality is literally going to translate into like anti-trans legislation and action.
Yeah, but that's her.
You have to
That's
be able
her
to
being
qualify that.
irrational. No, that's her being
Yeah, but
irrational.
it still doesn't change the fact that it invigorates her. Like, just because it's an irrational invigoration doesn't. Change
What
the
if
fact
you're?
that
What if
it's
you're?
invigoration.
Okay, here's a question. Ready? Let's say that you've got a neighbor in front of you, okay? And let's say that he's an abusive neighbor. And what he does is every single time he sees you shovel your driveway, he says he's going to go beat his wife. Would you still shovel your driveway, or is it unethical for you to do so? If you know when you go out and shovel your driveway, he's going to beat his wife, even though it's irrational, are you responsible for his behavior there?
Holy shit! I would try to call the police. I would try to like not shovel my I would try to do the best that I can do.
You'd negotiate with terrorists.
He's going to say you're going to hold yourself hostage to the irrational demands of another actor.
Well,
Once there's I think if somebody came to you with that and you're like, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway without any attempt to intervene in the situation before you begin shoveling again, I think that there is some responsibility born there, but
Sure.
like the 99.99% falls on the neighbor trying to put that on you.
Yeah, we can borrow
Right.
a term from Dr. Vosh here and say like it might be supererogatory or whatever. Like it'd be nice, I guess, you do something,
Or
but
like
there's
super.
absolutely no immoral obligation there, and there's no immorality if you aren't being held captive by somebody else's irrational demands.
Right,
Steven
but
says the
don't
based
think-
response would be to shovel the entire neighborhood's driveways
Do it
after that.
fucking enthusiastically. We already know what Steven would do.
Wait, no, but I
It's
was
like, I'll
like,
shovel everybody's.
Every time I do, let me get 2 fucking shovels.
Yeah, okay, but then my question becomes to you, like, wouldn't you try to like do other methods or try your best to try to like curb that before shoveling your driveway? Like you're just saying like, oh, like it doesn't, you should still shovel your driveway. And I'm saying, well, you should try to do as many actions as you can.
To intervene.
Yeah.
No, you don't
Well,
have.
and
No,
he's-
fuck no. You don't have a responsibility to that. Maybe I want my
Wait.
kids to be able to walk out to the street. Maybe I want like people to be able to walk my side without tripping. No, I'm not going to hold myself
I don't think
hostage.
it-
Steven, are you saying that wouldn't give you pause if you were the shoveler? Like, it wouldn't even give you pause if that
He's
Yeah,
not
it
asked
might
for
give
him,
me,
would give you
it might
pause
give
or
me
not.
pause. Yeah, if you're asking me how I'd respond in real life, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe. Well, I don't like shoveling my driveway, so I'd probably say fuck it. I can't do it because my neighbor's crazy. If you want the real life answer, but no, but like realistically, like that guy doesn't have any authority over me or his irrationality. Because like what, like how many we could walk that up to some level of arbitrary inconvenience where we'd say finally, okay, fine, that's not okay. Like what if you have a neighbor and he says, listen, I know that you've got like high blood sugar. I know you take diabetic medicine. Every single time you inject yourself with a sugar pump or whatever, I'm gonna rape my wife. Like, do you have any level of responsibility there if you don't live with low blood sugar? Like, let's say it won't kill you, but you'll like, maybe your lifespan will be shortened by 5 years. I imagine for that, you'd say, well, obviously you're fine to inject your diabetic pump. You don't have any type of, like, you're okay at that point, right? You don't have any responsibility to suffer there, do you?
Okay, but then there's multiple things to dissect here. One is like the level of like, personal suffering you're going to go through if you don't do X action, right? We
Yeah,
can
that's
say,
why
like,
I just said. I said there's going to be some arbitrary threshold where you're going to say, well, the consumption of Harry Potter game is not big. The consumption of insulin is big. But there's
Is
whatever.
that arbitrary, though?
The point is, just because there's like a threshold and we're not sure where it is, maybe I'm just being too nitpicky, but arbitrary just implies that like, oh, it doesn't matter that there's where the threshold is. And it's like, no, it does matter because like there are very big different consequences when it comes to dying of insulin and like not being able to shovel your fucking driveway.
Yeah, Steven, can you
Because it's not
clarify
clear
what you
what
mean
it
by
is.
arbitrary?
When I say
Hang on,
arbitrary, what I mean is you're not going to be able to draw a hard rule anywhere or even a fuzzy rule over like what is worth consuming and what's not. What if somebody says every time you drink coffee, so now you no longer like drink coffee? And then what if they say, well, every time you drink a caffeinated drink ever, I'm going to wife. And it's like, Jesus, I guess I'll cut all soda out of my life. Like, these are kind of arbitrary, but I mean, at some point, you're going to be like, okay, well, this is bullshit. Like, no, I'm not going to do this. So what if they say, like, when you come home at night, you have to pinch yourself, otherwise I'm going to wife. And it's like, I guess I can pinch myself. That's not a big deal. But it's just like somebody being
I don't think
irrational,
that's
dictating
okay.
your
That's
behavior.
outside.
I don't think you have any moral responsibility on that. That's insane.
That's
No,
the
you
point.
don't.
That's the ultimate point he's getting at. It's not what what would you actually do in the moment. It's whether or not you think that someone is morally culpable to be tied to someone
Well, I think
taking
when you
that
know
action.
somebody is in pain or like in some sort of like dire circumstance, I do think you have some level of responsibility to try your best to try to like resolve that or get them out. So I'm not saying you have to pinch yourself. I'm not saying you have to like not take the fucking insulin medication. I'm saying that you should at least like try to call the police or that you should at least like try to like see if you can get that lady to domestic resources.
Sure,
so
that's
she can,
fine. So like with the Harry Potter shit, it's okay to like take a stand against transphobia. If you see people being transphobic, say something about it. If you want to support trans people, put a rainbow sugar cone flag on your profile or whatever people do. Like
I've got two questions
saying
for.
that it's like completely reasonable to be like, hey, like, if you want to pirate the game or whatever so you don't invigorate her, that's also acceptable if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah, if that's what
Sure,
you want to
but I
do,
think-
sure. But as soon as you start condemning other people for not supporting your cause, you get into deranged territory.
Okay.
Pixie, I've got two questions for you. Something to consider. Number one, regarding that J.K. Rowling quote that you're talking about, where she says, I consider it an endorsement of my beliefs or whatnot. Number one, if that's true, do you believe her? Like, do you think she actually thinks that? Because now I'm wondering if she could be like trolling or just like trying to talk shit, like because she knows this game is gonna, it's gonna like it's already breaking record sales. It's not even released yet.
No, I think when it comes to like, maybe this is me being bad faith, but when it comes to a lot of TERFs or people who tend to fall under that category, I absolutely think that they grasp onto everything that can seem as like some sort of endorsement to them. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's an endorsement to her.
Okay, and then
think-
number.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Because my question's about a completely separate thing about this. So go ahead if you want to respond to that.
I just every time we get to the what harm is JK causing or that she'd be emboldened, I just think that when you're justifying theft or when you're justifying having a negative impact on the developers that worked on this game, you should be able to quantify the level of harm and whether or not it's actually going to have an impact on her changing her opinion about this. Because if anything, the failure of this game is just going to embolden her. That would be the bet I would take.
Wait, why would it embolden her?
Because if she sees these trans activists and allies coming out after her game and they cost that game money, they cause it to fail, it's something tied to her intellectual property, she's going to see that as more of a reason to stand against it.
She's not going to find it. She's not going to. I mean, I see what he's saying. Like, she could be motivated either out of spite, fear, or consider it like vindication of her belief that, woke leftists have gone too far on this particular issue, see that they're trying to actually hurt me, therefore I'm going to double down. I agree that I doubt she'd find it persuasive if, Hogwarts Legacy's sales tanked, right? That wouldn't be a repudiation.
Would you find downloading to be suddenly ethical if I told you it actually increased sales?
No.
Why not?
Because it's still unethical. Just because it increases sales, no one's doing it out of altruism. They're doing it out of self-interest.
Do the motivations matter? What does
Yes.
the intention matter? Downloading is downloading is downloading. You don't know if somebody downloaded because they're in a destitute situation, they need to get a textbook. You don't know if they're doing it because they just want to the author.
Wait, hold on. You can't ask it. Wait, what? That's like saying like stealing is stealing or whatever. Wait, we already agree that that's not the case. Like somebody stealing a potato because they're starving is gonna be different than somebody stealing a video game because they want to play a video game.
Well, with downloading, it's way harder to determine the intentions, right? Or no?
Well, sure. Are we giving like a real world, like, do we know the intentions of a thief, or are we giving like the hypothetical ethical question?
I don't know, because it's like Lycan's question ties back to like, can you do like in your attempt to like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So he's saying like you guys are boycotting, but you might actually be emboldening this woman like in this roundabout way, or like paradoxically, kind of like when you're trying to decrease her sales and stuff like that. How do you know that that's not just invigorating her more to go harder in other respects that then enable more transphobia?
Well, it's certainly enabling transphobes. I mean, you see it all. You see people on Twitter and social media that they're talking about. They're going to buy multiple copies of the game to shore up whatever loss in sales that she might get, like Lauren Chen and Nuance Bro and all of them.
It's so cringy and performative and
all the way down.
It's like when people would burn Kaepernick's jersey, right? Like people would literally like film themselves, put it up on Twitter of them burning their jersey.
Yeah, I agree. That is ultra fucking cringe, but it is just as cringe as the people like, I'm not buying this because I love and support trans people. And if you don't buy this, or if you do buy this, you hate trans people. You're transphobic if you support this.
I think that's cringy too, because I don't think consumer activism means much. It's so.
Well, consumer activism absolutely means much. I don't know what you mean by that. I think consumer activism drives an unbelievable amount of our market shit. Like, I think economically, I feel like there's an NPR paper, like, people would even choose things that would say, like, your coffee beans are, like, ethically sourced and shit. Like, there was a name for this in marketing. I don't know what it's called. It's, like, a green premium or something. But, like, when you label shit as green or when you label shit as, like, ethically sourced, like, consumers are willing to pay a premium for it. So I think there's a big driver in that type of consumer behavior.
It is, but, like, that's just marketing strategies. Is that actually the case that it is somehow more ethical?
We're not talking about whether it's active. We're talking about if consumer activism works, and I think it does. There are like very clear market signals for people consuming products that are like ethically sourced or come off as green.
Like that would depend, because the type of person who's already wants to get like fancy ass coffee beans from Rwanda and stuff like that is also the type of person that's going to pay like $80 for a Keurig. Like they're already willing to like expend additional money. I think it's going to vary so much depending on the product, as opposed to like you think the average person at like or average shopper maybe at something more like, you know, working class friendly or something like that. Like, you think they're going to give a like, you know,
working class people? No,
like
but like any like middle class person, yeah, because Starbucks coffee could probably be cheaper if they would just like source their beans from like the worst fucking places possible. But I think they pride themselves on getting it from the nicest farmers or some bullshit.
Well, maybe Aaron's
charging a premium, not just because they could get away with it.
Wait,
maybe Aaron's claim was overbroad.
Wait, what was that question? Say that again.
I said, do you think that that's why like their beans are more overpriced, is because like it actually costs more to like harvest them in an ethical way? I would just think it's because they can get away with charging that much.
Well, there's gonna be you're not just
it's a difference in terms of like pennies. Literally doesn't matter.
It's gonna be some amount of cost, and if they could make it cheaper, they would. And like you can't just charge whatever price you want because you're Starbucks. Like you still have competition with like fellow coffee shops. Like pretty sure there's coffee shops in the United States.
And I don't know if this necessarily plays into it, but Starbucks also does more than just source them from an ethical place. They also invest a ton in the communities from which they get them. They build them schools. They pay their... Huh?
You Starbucks shell?
He's
I tried to start a coffee company once, and I did a lot of research.
Oh, was it called Black Rifle Coffee Company?
Wow.
No, it was called Go F Yourself. You.
Damn.
Whoa.
Damn.
I can't believe it
damn.
didn't make it off the ground. That's really catchy. That's a good.
Ooh,
good title.
spicy.
Actually, the guy I tried to start it with
spicy
was
meatball.
the guy I tried to start it with was
Italian?
I am Italian. I take offense to that, but we're allowed to make fun of Dagos, so whatever. The guy I tried to start the company with, we were like coming up with some meme ideas, and he said we should call it "Get Woke," get it, because it's coffee, and then have like a black hand, white hand shaking.
Oh my god, this is really some like Seinfeld tier, like the black and white cookie, two races of flavor coming together in racial harmony.
Honestly, like, and I think that could have worked in like New York or some shit.
Yeah,
I know.
feel
I think for a meme,
it's for believing
I think it could have been good.
I'm ending racism by consuming this like woke coffee. I mean, conservatives think that when they buy the Black like Rifle Coffee Company, right? Like, oh, I love the Kyle Rittenhouse roast. Like, this is so good, you know?
Is there a Kyle Rittenhouse roast, really?
There should be. I hope there is.
I mean, but yeah, a lot of people buy Black Rifle because they're huge supporters of the military. They do a lot for charity and all that stuff, and they have that image.
Yeah, but it's so lame to me. It's like, I feel like you would still buy a coffee from that company regardless of whether or not some of the money went to charity. It's people like, oh, I can feel good about this choice or whatever. But if they really wanted to donate to charity, they just go donate to charity.
No, come on.
I mean,
that's
most
not.
people
Wait,
would.
stop. No, that's not a rational thing. Okay, there are a lot of people that, given the opportunity to pick between two products, would pay 5 or 10 cents more for the more ethically sourced one. That wouldn't be motivated to go out and. I could talk about myself here. I could be at a store, and if somebody's like, oh, this is some bullshit, and the kids all get like patted on the head every night before they get tucked into their expensive beds, but it costs like $3 more, I'd probably buy it. But I don't know where the fuck I'm gonna go look up charities to donate to people that pet kids on the head. Like, I don't know where the fuck to do that. Like, people will absolutely make decisions to buy different products that wouldn't just go and donate the money anyway.
I think what we've learned from this is that some form of consumer activism clearly works, whereas others don't. Like this, in going all the way back to the Hogwarts example, leaving the world of coffee. I think we all agree that Hogwarts Legacy's sales are probably, and we know the pre-order sales are extraordinary. I doubt this game is going to be a financial ruin. It's going to do extremely well despite the negative press around it and the attempts at consumer activism. So in this way, in this context, it's probably not going to be very effective. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that even this kind of goes back to what Strader Raid was saying. Even if you go to, even if the game is a financial success, I still think if you have the money to buy the game and you don't, but you want to play the game, it's immoral to buy the game or to pirate it.
Yeah, well, again, my position is that I still go back to on a technical level. If you consider this any sort of validation of a transphobe's belief or you're bankrolling transphobia in an indirect way, I don't think that there's an ethical way to consume the game. I just also think that we make all these kinds of ethical compromises all the time. So I just don't think it's a big deal in the end.
Right. Real sacrifice would be not buying the game or not playing the game at all. It's like, okay, cool. I'm not going to pirate it.
Correct.
It's even worse for developers, though, because if you're not like, what is it? Like,
I'm sorry, Pixie, you cut out. Could you repeat? I'm sorry, seriously. Could you repeat that, Captain?
Okay, I feel like it's even worse for developers if you don't buy it, if you don't even pirate it, though, because then it's like, they don't have any metrics that they can show about more people being interested in the game. It just like comes across as like lack of interest.
So, wait a minute. So you think piracy is a more ethical, option than boycotting? All right.
It can be, depending on the context. Like,
Aaron, I thought you took the rum away from her. Get it away from her. Listen to her. Listen to this craziness.
Wait, Pixie, wouldn't
stop.
that still...
Like, oh my god! I literally, the argument is really clear, and it's not that hard to wrap your mind around. If you do not want to buy this game, you're not planning to buy this game, whatever, because J.K. Rowling, transphobe, you feel that way, okay. But you want to support the developer somehow without supporting J.K. Rowling or invigorating her. Well, then at the very least, when they're like tracking how many illegal downloads or whatever they have, they can point to that being even additional interest in the game and just like, hey, we lost this potential revenue not because we were bad at developing a game, but because people just didn't want to pay money because of J.K. Rowling.
Well, yeah, but I think something you have to worry about too is that like people will make decisions on what products to produce, I think, based on the propensity for people to pay for it or pirate it.
Yeah, but I feel like when company, sorry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if everybody's going to pirate a certain type of thing, sorry, God, what were we going to say?
I was going to say, so when the company is like trying to get more investors or people to buy this or to like create this new game, they can point to that and make it a clear factor to what contributed to a higher rate of piracy, not the fact that the game was bad in itself. And I feel like if a potential investor is like looking at some sort of pitch or whatever, and they see that, they're going to be a lot more likely to, hey, I should still put my money in this company. It's obviously make good games. It's obvious like people are interested in those games. This was just an external factor that influenced who would buy it, not necessarily the playability of the game.
I don't disagree with that at all, but I would say that the pendulum swings both ways when it comes to those optics, right? So if people are keeping track of how many times it's downloaded, why wouldn't JK still look at it as a very successful product and a very successful IP?
Because from my understanding, she said specifically people buying the game or giving her.
Oh, come on, no shot. If she saw a bunch of people pirating it, she'd probably think the same thing. No, if we really are going to believe that.
You don't think that? Okay, you would ask why are all these people pirating it instead of just buying it, right? And then
they're doing it ironically.
They're doing it, yeah. Like the answer seems. Oh, okay. The answer seems to, like, logically fall out that it's because they don't want to give you money. Like, why don't they want to give you money? Because they don't like you. Because they're like online.
I mean, she can see how many people support her opinions or approve of her shit, right? Like, it's not.
She knows, and like I still, that makes me turn back to look how these reactionaries respond to this type of pressure from the social justice warrior side, right? She's going to see it as an emboldening event. She's going to see it as this is another reason why these people are insane. Which maybe we should go to the discussion of how well do people understand the TERF position? Like, do they really just think it's a bunch of people that just explicitly hate trans people and that's it, the end of story?
Yeah, I think that trans athlete arc, I think a lot of trans discourse, because I think it validated a lot of the fears of TERFy people that trans people were coming for and trying to destroy women's spaces. I think a lot of those fears were super validated for the public discourse related to the trans sports stuff.
Yeah, because like
felt that way before that.
You what?
TERFs already felt that way about women's sports.
Yeah, but why?
Yeah, but the problem was they could largely you could write them off as being kooks, right? That's not a race. That's not a slur, is it?
No.
Yeah, they're weird, right? Like trans people aren't coming for women's spaces. That was like a straw man bullshit argument. But I can't say that anymore after the trans sports things, because now it seems like there's a sizable amount of people, at least online. I don't know how much it's made its way to the real discourse, that absolutely do want to completely destroy women's spaces. So I don't know. The answer to that is anymore now.
I think it's still a straw man because, again, if you're talking about the Leah Thomas thing, that's like a blip of 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 a statistic.
Hold on. No. It's not about the statistic. It's about the principle. And that's a lot of people saying that women's sports should be eliminated.
Who is a lot of people? You mean your Twitter timeline, Steven?
Like big tweets, like here is a discourse that I saw that got really popular was, and I don't know how many people believe this, hopefully it's not, but some of these tweets had like tens of thousands of likes. It was the idea that women's sports was just created to be oppressive towards women. That was a point of view that I've seen, and I think I've seen a few videos on it too, where people are like, women were actually dominating sports so hard that they had to make women's sports to kick them out so that men could finally compete again. Like, I don't know, like that, seeing that type of shit, and then people saying that like, well, women, we don't need women's sports, and it's showing up like Vice shit and everything. I don't know.
Feel like there should be ways to compartmentalize your thoughts on that issue. Like, I think you should be able to kind of voice maybe disagreements about like the current structure of how like trans athletes fit into like binary sports right now without being branded like a TERF. And I think alternatively, you should be able to think that maybe like Leah Thomas should be included in like the girls teams without saying that you're necessarily going to be like anti-science or like do you know what I mean? Without necessarily throwing in with like either camp. I think there's somewhere in between.
I mean, maybe, but the fact is that people were starting to come out in favor of like just like saying that like women's sports categories shouldn't exist, or that like all trans people should be able to compete in like all women's categories, which is a little bit different. But like
tweeters and like people on Twitter, I don't doubt it. But were there any like
the problem is like the Twitter shit is like becoming like mainstream. Like if it's not already.
Like I'm saying if it's so mainstream, like is this reflected in like the Trevor Project or like some huge organization? Because I think I did see one.
I mean, that's no more reflective than trans people saying there are like 120 bills about the cause of the trans genocide across the United States, when all of these bills are like sponsored by two people in a state legislature that has no fucking chance of like passing at all. So, I mean, it's as real as the trans people saying that like all of these bills are on the verge of eliminating trans people when none of them have popular support in any state assembly anywhere.
I feel like most people probably, I don't know. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I genuinely don't know how people pull on this issue, but like, I feel like there is probably a lot of people who want Leah Thomas to be able to compete with the women's team, but they don't agree necessarily with the standards that have been set by the NCAA, or like I'm not sure what the swimming organization is. Like maybe you think they're too low or something, or too high. Or do you disagree?
That's like such a nuanced. I don't know. Maybe I don't know where. I think most people probably still feel like men are men and women are women, and they don't want the trans people competing in any of the cis categories at all. That'd be my guess for most of it. But
Is that true? Is that how most Americans poll? I just say that because I know that trans athletes have been allowed to compete within the Olympics for like 20 years, right?
I I don't even know if that's true.
I think so.
So
But it's not until they win that I feel like people start to actually freak out. It's not really like people are allowed, or like people are fine with trans athletes being included in this in the, or like playing with the sports team that aligns with their gender identity. But they're not okay when they start to win, because then they will always assume like, well, that trans athlete only won because of their transition and the gender.
I don't think that I don't think they'd be okay with it. I don't know if in 2004 we were just talking about trans. I don't think people were aware of it. But I don't think whether or not people were doing it or not. I'm sorry, whether or not people are winning or not. I don't think is the issue.
You don't think so?
Well, wait a minute. One last thing I'm sorry, just on the JK thing, because I had a second question before Lycan spiraled me off, and then we can go back to the broader trans question. But as far as to put a button on the JK and Harry Potter thing, my last question for Pixie and Aaron is, given the unlikelihood that JK will renounce her ways, would you say that there is the only way to ethically consume anything from the Harry Potter IP moving forward, like the new movies, or if there's ever going to be a TV show, new books, blah, 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 all these things, would be to pirate them until she either changes her views or croaks?
No, I don't think that's necessarily more ethical. Pixie and I have like different takes on this. But I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't stop somebody from doing that. Like again, it's more of like a live and let live thing. I'm pretty agnostic towards it. If that's
Sure.
what people feel that they need to do to be able to sleep at night and like tell themselves I'm consuming it more ethically than the person next to me who actually paid for it, go forth, my child. I really don't care, just because I don't think that's an effective like strategy. And I think I separate the art from the artist. I think more than the average person does. I don't think you consuming like JK, like Harry Potter or anything like that is any more an endorsement of like J.K. Rowling's views than you consuming like anybody's product for the most part. Like I think you should still be able to enjoy the media without like people
It being
assuming
any sort of endorsement.
that you're co-signing everything that she says.
Right.
And also, just because J.K. Rowling, again, like I said this at the beginning, asserts that like this invigorates me or whatever, we don't necessarily know how true that is, because it's just an assertion that she's making.
Right.
Who knows what her intentions are, what she plans to do afterwards, like whatever the sales turn out to be. And I think they've done pretty well as far as pre-orders go.
What about Jack Sparrow there? What's she think?
Fixie, what's your take?
I'm trying so hard not to be right now because I just really want to be like, oh yeah, we should all just download cars and okay, but really on on the topic, I want to make it clear that it's not like I'm like personally like indicting you if you decide to like fucking buy the game. I just think that if you're worried about invigorating J.K. Rowling, then yeah, like I think if you want to like avoid that, then a possible way of doing that is by pirating. And I could say the same thing for like other media. I think as long as the developers are paid beforehand, it's okay.
Just
And in the
I'm sorry,
argument,
just to clarify, wait a minute, just to clarify, because I hear you, but as far as J.K. Rowling is concerned, you're saying that you're not necessarily insistent on this, but you would say that the ethical way to consume anything from the Harry Potter IP moving forward until she either recants her views or she dies and is thus no longer financially benefiting from it would be to pirate it. So like the new movies, new books, etc. and so forth.
if you believe buying will invigorate her, then yes. If you don't believe that that's a valid, like logical statement, if you think she's just bullshitting about that, then it would follow that none of that would make a difference because she would still be invigorated. I personally am just basing what I believe off of what she said. But
Right.
I can understand why other people are more cynical or skeptical and just think she was just saying that to say that. I'm just
Right.
saying it follows.
Yeah.
And
I'm not-
like and Steven, you guys think that that's bullshit, right? Just to get your position on the record, like that's all bullshit. Right.
Yeah, I think that you should. In society, there's going to be people that disagree with us. I don't think that should massively affect our consumption habits. I think we're already way too far on the side of like boycotting and canceling and destroying everything that has an opinion that disagrees with us at all. I think it's not good.
Okay.
So, no, I'll let the cat stopper stay on this, and when it comes up again, I'll go into it.
Well, we might as
Fair.
well. All I'm going to do is Victoria. So,
I think an issue I have is that with this logic, like we talk about, oh well, we know for sure she feels this way, right? But I think the reality is that on a daily basis, you cannot consume a product that is invented by someone or benefiting someone financially or emboldening them to donate to a charity you don't like or anything like that. You just cannot in this world. Like there are people from things you do, from the software you own or use on a daily basis to, I mean, do you have do you have a cell phone, right? Like think about that. And so we'll say, oh, well, we need the cell phones. There's a huge utility to it. And it's like, you could go back to analog. Like your life isn't going to be impossible that way. You are saying that my morals when it comes to child slavery, farming poor countries for their resources, things like that, don't matter that much because I need the cell phone.
Right.
So I just think that I don't like that train of thought. It's like at the end of the day, unless you buying that product, like, buying street heroin, we can tie that directly to actual real world harm.
Right.
You can't really do that with most consumer products.
It's untenable. I mean, like the same people who back in like 2000 whatever who were boycotting Chick-fil-A because they're gay or because they were homophobic and supporting like homophobic organizations will then go and fill up their car with gasoline from a country that would like, throw gay people off of roofs or whatever,
Right.
simply for being gay. I mean, I draw this similar parallel. It's really hard to speak to the intentions of the consumer, and I'm sure even companies have a hard time understanding like why or why not a product or a service or a piece of media fails or succeeds. Because like when I'm vegan, I've been vegan since I was 16, but I don't look at people who are not vegan as like moral monsters. Like I assume most people are broadly against like animal cruelty and stuff like that. And if there was a way for them to be vegan or to consume animal products in a way that they didn't have to like kill an animal's life or take an animal's life or support animal cruelty like they would, but it just so happens to be the setup of our current society that it's inconvenient to do so. And I don't even fault people for that because like it's a major life shift. I think most people want to do that, yeah. Like most people, even people who are like kind of begrudgingly buying Hogwarts Legacy or whatever, they're like, well, I wish she wasn't like transphobic, but I still want the game. I just want to be able to like buy this product. I'm not trying to endorse reviews.
Yeah. So something I was getting at when I brought up, like, I don't think most people understand turfs, and I could be totally wrong. I don't really spend a lot of time researching turfs, and I know they've evolved a lot, especially over the last, 3 to 5 years, something like that. But when I initially started hearing this, all I was hearing from the turfs was the same, I'm going to say woke, and I'm not doing it in a pejorative way, but like the same woke ideology we heard for years, which was you don't have the lived experience, you don't get to participate in this. You just need to stand back, shut up, and listen. So then you have people who transition later in life entering like women's meetings and women's clubs and organizations, or I think the bigger one that I kind of understood the most was women's activism. And it's like, okay, you just transitioned and really don't have the lived experience to understand what we're going through, what we've been through all our lives in the workplace, in society, whatever. And I feel like that's where a lot of the foundation for the turf shit is built. Is that incorrect?
I can't speak because I'm not a turf.
Yeah, me neither.
But
Well, I figured you guys.
Yeah, a lot of the turf stuff is
them.
the feelings of, you should know what turfs think if you're railing against them so much. But like the foundation for a lot of turf thought is the idea that, or at least from what I've heard, is the idea that like women have worked for a long time to build spaces for women. And that's been like a struggle and a fight. And a lot of them don't necessarily view trans people as being real, or if they do, they think that a lot of trans people are basically like men in disguise, and that the spaces that they've worked really hard to build are going to be fundamentally and forever altered with the presence and introduction of trans people into those spaces. Because trans women do not share the same struggles or the same experiences that cis women do. They have a unique set of experiences that are something outside of that. So for them to step into their space and then claim to be women and then claim to share in all the same struggles is a threat to that space. That's the turf argument. So
right.
When you see things, the biggest things that turfs are usually fueled by are either going to be men that shit on women. That's massive turf ammunition. So cis men using trans women to attack feminists is a big one. And the second one is going to be women's spaces that are being called for the eradication for because they are transphobic. So like a woman's locker room, a women's spa, or women's sports in favor of being more inclusive to trans people, or just eliminating them altogether.
Well, the reason that I hesitated to respond to Lycan there, because I, again, not that I'm inundated in this, especially since I tend more towards like policy wonk positions in terms of practical politics, but I thought he offered a much more nuanced like interpretation of quote unquote turf perspective than what I skim through when I see like it in my timeline on Twitter, because I don't think, again, I could be wrong, but I think that a lot of people or fewer people would have issues with so-called turfs if they offered that nuanced perspective. Like, look, I do believe that you're a woman because I do distinguish between gender and sex, but because you lived however much of your life as, you know, a man before you transitioned, you don't have the same lived experience as a cis woman, then I think like fewer people would object to turf perspectives. I think it's what you said.
There's going to be there's a diversity of thought on the turf spectrum, just like there's a diversity of thought
Sure.
on the far right spectrum. But nobody cares to investigate that. Nobody knows.
Well, yeah, but what I mean is, to me, I think it's kind of what you added in there, which is I think a lot of turfs or a lot of turfs that get shit, like they take it one step further and say, not only do you not have the lived experience, which is technically true, like you said, it's a unique set of experiences that trans people go through. Mm-hmm. But then they add on top of it the judgment that you're not a woman because you have not had those same lived experiences, if that makes sense. So like to me, that's why I hesitated to kind of respond to like in there, because I'm thinking, no, if that were more common, I think a conversation could be had between, you know, trans activists and trans allies and people you'd consider turfs. But I think that the real divide is when they take it to the assessment that you're not a woman.
Sure, but I mean, it's going to depend on the type of, like, because for some of these people, like the defining aspect of being a woman are the acts and the rituals and the lived experience that you have. Like that's part of the definition of being a woman. They're not even coming at it from this is kind of a guess because I'm not a turf obviously, but I'm pretty sure that if a turf was talking to you, a turf wouldn't come up to you and say, "Oh, I'm transphobic because I believe that trans women don't have the same biological characteristics." It's not going to give you a Ben Shapiro answer, right? These are still feminists, right? I think the answer that they're going to give you is no, women have a shared set of experiences in society, both in how they function, their performance as a female in society, and in how they're treated, the struggles that they suffer through as a society, that a trans woman or an AMAB, an assigned male at birth person, does not have. They don't share in those experiences. They don't share in that gender performativity. They don't share in any of that shared oppression. So they can't call themselves a woman and be included in those spaces. That's like the
I know you know this.
Yeah.
I know you know this, but do you think that they would also know this, that people who were assigned, you know, female at birth, AFAB or whatever, and have lived their lives as women, that there's a variance of lived experiences among them as well. I mean, based on race, based on socioeconomic status, based on where they live. I mean,
well, sure, but like they're gonna say,
because even
you don't believe that, right? Yes, everybody has a difference in experiences, obviously, of course, but there's going to be shared experiences that people have, right? There's going to be a shared experience that, depending on the type of society you're in, when I travel overseas and I'm in a store and I hear an American accent, there's an immediate sense of like camaraderie there. If you're in an area and you spot like the only other black person, right? There's a feeling of shared camaraderie there. If you're in an area and somebody references a band you like and it's a bunch of boomers and one other guy there, sort of like Linkin Park, there's shared camaraderie there. Just by hearing that one thing, the place you're born in, the race you are, the gender you are, like you'll be able to connect on a whole world of things by virtue of that. And for women, it's no different, right? Of course, people are gonna have different experiences, but there's still a shared history there, right?
Yeah, but that talking point has never made much sense to me because socialization doesn't end with childhood. Once you transition,
nobody said socialization ends at childhood.
I know, but the
that's a
position
turf.
kind of presupposes that it does because
No,
they're
it
saying like
doesn't.
you don't have the experience of like a cis woman or whatever. But it's like, well, no, and I don't think that like trans women are claiming to. But they usually, even prior to transition, now not all trans women or whatever, but a lot of them were kind of, I guess, genderqueer in their presentation, androgynous somewhat. And probably experienced like a femphobia with their presentation as a feminine man prior to transition that is rooted in misogyny that they could have a shared basis with the cis woman.
No, no, I don't think so. I don't. If you're a trans woman and you're experiencing misogyny, that's like the goal. But like you've had to do a lot of work.
Wait, what do you mean that's like the goal?
Like if you're a trans woman, your problems are stemming from you being treated as a woman in society. Like that's like you're ahead of most other trans people.
Well, I'm talking about their experience pre-transition, as maybe perhaps presenting as like a feminine man.
Yeah, pre-transition, they're not going to have a female experience. They're going to have a gender queer experience, or they're going to have a gender nonconforming experience. It's not going to be.
I feel like there seems to be a really big overlap when it comes to gender nonconforming experiences and just like women experience.
Absolutely not.
Can I finish my sentence to explain why I think this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. And the reason why I say that is because it seems like even when women are adhering to the rules that are trying to be in place amongst the society, like those rules are still like denigrated, or like their ability to not conform perfectly is denigrated. It seems like women cannot escape like a reality where being female is not something of like denigration. And when you're gender non-conforming, or when you're female presenting, like there is still like a shared basis there when it comes to like denigration.
You don't,
So
but we don't bond on shared like you can loosely bond on it, but there's still gonna be different types of feelings, right? Like if you're a woman and you're like feeling denigrated because of society, and then the year is like 1750 and there's like a brother in the field and you're like, man, I know just what it's like to be denigrated like you, my fellow slave, because people denigrate me too. Like, okay, like just because you both share in denigration doesn't mean that the experience is the same. There are
I'm
far
not saying
different.
it's exactly the same, but I am saying there is a level of shared denigration. So, for example, I'm women who are too, let's say, frilly, even like let's say they're like too feminine. Well, then suddenly it's like pick me or boring or like you're too traditional or whatever. Like why aren't you just trying to be like let go of yourself, be more loose, whatever. And it seems like, okay, people who are like gender non-conforming, if they start dressing more womanly, then it's like, oh, like, why are you like trying to be something you're not? Like, you should like just like let more loose. Like, you shouldn't like, try so hard.
Hold on.
Right?
So let's back up for a second. Let's just get a macro perspective here. Are you trying to make the argument that a gender queer or gender non-conforming person's experience growing up is quite similar to that of an average cis woman?
No, I'm saying.
Okay, then if you don't agree, then that's my argument. And then I don't know why you're trying to make these really edge case arguments for it. That there might be a very.
It seems like because it seems like TERFs are arguing that there is no shared experience.
No, nobody. That would be the retard argument. There's a shared experience between every single human being on this planet. Everybody gets hungry. Everybody gets thirsty. Everybody.
Okay, but they're saying that there's no shared experience in terms of gender. They're
Yes,
saying,
because
like, it's just a completely separate dimension. And it's like, no, they're not exactly the same, but there is a level of overlap. Just because you are
but there's a level of
whatever, doesn't mean that you didn't experience any denigration.
No one is saying that you didn't experience any denigration. It's just that the woman experience, the feeling, the growing up of being a cis woman carries with it a particularly shared set of experiences. A lot of those can be oppressive that aren't going to be experienced by trans women. That's the only argument, and that's almost certainly true.
Can I ask you, Stephen, on this point? Because I was trying to write it out in a way that's coherent with you guys going back and forth. But is it possible that is arbitrary? And what I mean is, so like I think Pixie was kind of trying to make the case that I was, which is that given the wide range of shared experiences among AFABs, I think Pixie made the point that at least on some level, maybe on average considerably less, but given that trans women and assigned female at birth, women, that they can have a shared experience on some level, is it arbitrary where a TERF would assign it?
No, I don't. I mean, like, you can argue that it's going to be hard to draw it exactly, but the reality is, again, when we get into like very minutiae arguments like this, I like to back up and think: do women, as a category, have kind of like can you argue for a shared collective oppressive experience living under patriarchy? For women, the answer to that is almost certainly yes. Are trans women having their own experience? For sure. Is there a big overlap? Almost certainly not. No.
I think there's more overlap than TERFs are willing to admit.
What kind of
being exclusionary towards trans women than they are to being like just pro women?
What are some of like the defining oppressive characteristics of women, and then what are some of the defining oppressive characteristics of trans women? Like where is the
I don't play the game of TERFs or whatever where they think that the defining experience of like womanhood is like to be brutalized by men. I've never agreed with this.
Okay, that's fine if you don't, but they do, and I think a lot of women do. A lot of women are going to feel similarly about like certain beauty standards being enforced on them from an insanely young age, of the going through puberty and PMS at very early ages, sometimes without warning, of being sexualized by other men in their lives, sometimes at a very early age, as early as 9, 10, or 11, women will experience this, of being bought certain types of gifts and being told you can only do certain types of things, of having different sets of responsibilities in the household, of being portrayed different ways in media. These are all like shared experiences that feminists would argue are defining factors of a woman's oppressive role in society. society, of seeing the way that her dad treats her mom, right? And they're going to say that all of these roles being placed on them and all of these external things being pushed on them are things that trans women just haven't experienced growing up. And by the time you're even 16 or 15 or 14, you've already had a lot of this drilled into your head at a very early age. So they're going to say trans women
They're so divisive that they could probably make inroads with trans women who want to be their ally in respect to those issues, but they're so divisive that they couldn't.
But we're not talking about being an ally, though. We're talking about the fundamental destruction of those spaces.
Ally, but like standing with them in solidarity with respect to like fighting these issues for like period equity and like being anti-domestic violence. Like, you need to have that shared basis. I think men have just as much of an ability to like be feminists or like, you know.
Yeah, but there's a difference between saying like you can include me in your spaces versus I'm an ally, right?
Yeah, there is.
And like the problem that a lot of like trans women, even the arguments that you guys are making, like, oh, well, no, they do have some shared experience. Like, and again, I've seen some tweets blow up, but there's a lot of criticism too. I don't know if this is going to become more mainstream in the future. Hopefully not. But like, you're seeing like large chunks of trans women online supporting the idea that trans women have periods, right? Like there was one.
Crazies on Twitter, Steven.
You can LOL at it all you want, but like a lot of this shit is like mainstream discourse now. So like you can pretend that it's not a big deal, but like you're the only one that's gonna feel that way, and you're gonna be disconnected from every other human in society, right? When like the libs of TikTok is getting like mainstream media attention and shit, you can't just go, oh, LOL, it's only fucking Twitter, right? Leah Thomas was like a defining conversation point for Republicans coming up with the midterms. I think that was driving a lot of the sentiment of different people. I think Ron DeSantis, like one of Ron DeSantis's big few legislative victories was his "Don't Say Gay" bill. So if you want to say LOL, it's just Twitter, but then on the meantime, like cry that people are buying a LOL, it's a video game, like these positions are incongruent. We kind of have to start to deal with the whole world as it is, and Twitter is like a big part of it right now.
Well, no, I don't think that the response of bad faith conservatives, I don't think that the response of bad faith conservatives like Ron DeSantis and libs of TikTok means that the talking points they're espousing or the frequency with which like they're cherry picked examples like that doesn't follow that the thing that they're complaining about is as widespread and pervasive as they say it is simply because they're popular. Ron DeSantis is like, don't say it. These are niche culture war issues that they are successfully weaponizing and blowing wildly out of proportion. Yeah, but I don't think that their success in that is. I don't think that refutes what Aaron is saying. This is a relatively niche thing that bad faith conservatives are skillfully able to weaponize into a broader platform. That doesn't mean that it's a mainstream position that trans women are experiencing periods. You will not find a single Democrat anywhere who believes that. It's just so I completely disagree with that. I don't think that the two are correlated.
But this is the thing that I said before. This was the issue, is that the amount of people that believe it or that how widespread a problem isn't the defining factor. It's how many people are willing to step up and support it. That's the issue. When you get a lot of people that come up and step up and support a thing, even when it's not widespread, it gives the impression of it being way more widespread than it actually is. When these crazy niche issues come up, when you've got a trans person walking around saying like, oh, I'm having a period as a trans woman, then you should just say like, you're castigate them. You're being a fucking moron. You. And then boom, move on. But the fact is, a lot of people step up to defend it. So what seems like a minor thing, and probably is a minor thing, and most trans women don't even say this cringe shit, now it seems like a way bigger problem because so many people are stepping up to defend it on social media. And I think that's a problem. Like, you should be able to disown the dumb shit and then move on immediately to the next thing. But progressives can't do that. Or like the Twitter space or the Twitter world can't do that. They all are stuck defending these insane positions, and then it makes the problem seem so much more larger than it actually is.
And that is why we are in the space we are when it comes to TERFs. Because these conversations, even the way you guys are engaging with Stephen and I, these conversations didn't happen this way. It was very quick to, you guys are evil, no engagement, no pushback, no one tried to like bridge the gap. It was not you, TERF. That's it. And so it just emboldened it. It made it worse. And people don't like to look at it that way because they don't want to give them any deference. You know, blah blah, civility, politics, all that. But at the end of the day, yeah, we probably should have had many more inclusive conversations where we engage with them with their feelings, their thoughts, their concerns, and we ultimately did harm. We made the TERF movement more powerful because no one wanted to do that.
I feel like you guys are getting Twitter algorithmed like really hard. I honestly do, because like all these like you guys are like, oh, people are defending them, nobody's like stepping up and arguing against, and like I can't say that from my personal Twitter fucking experience because I see people arguing against like insane takes all the fucking time.
Okay, what is J.K. Rowling doing to kill trans people outside of her tweets and her blogs?
From my understanding, she's like putting like money into like anti-TERF movements that are trying to like pass legislation like in like
the UK.
In the UK, yeah.
Has she? Does she actually like significantly donate to these things? Because I think most people's association with J.K. Rowling are like her tweets and her blogs.
From my understanding, she
Okay,
has.
but if you want to downplay the impact of J.K. Rowling's tweets, and wouldn't that apply to
I'm
every
not.
Twitter
How do you
user,
miss the
every
point so
sane
fucking
person
hard?
who's
Stop.
okay?
How do you
How
miss?
do
No,
you
no. I'm not saying that J.K. Rowling is irrelevant because she's on Twitter. What I'm saying is that
downplaying the effect that
I'm
she can
not
have. I
downplaying the.
agree with you. So like you can
Okay,
downplay the
keep going.
effect that like huge tweets that have all this engagement also have. You can just as easily handwave them then.
Okay. I'm making the exact opposite point. I don't know how you miss it so hard. I'm not downplaying the fact that she's huge on Twitter. I'm saying that these are platforms that are mattering to people. That shit on Twitter is like showing up on like Jackson Hinkle is on Tucker Carlson and shit. That all of these things that are blowing up on Twitter are very quickly and immediately making its way all into mainstream media. That a lot of the discourse is being driven on there. Elon Musk buying Twitter was a huge fucking deal. The Twitter files covering things about Twitter are a huge fucking deal. All of these.
The right will use this to weaponize this type of discourse and use it as a wedge issue, but it didn't even pan out because the midterms, the Republicans, the red wave never happened. They failed miserably. This was a historic loss for the Republican Party, and they did try to like stir up their base by using anti-LGBT and anti-trans bills to encourage their base to come out. I don't think it happened.
Sure, but I don't think it's because Twitter was ineffective. I think it's because there's a divide in the Republican Party right now between supporting Trump or not. That's like the huge disconnect. I guess we can wait like 5 or 10 years to see what happens, but like it's very clearly been heading in a very strong direction that social media is driving conversations. It's not just irrelevant shit anymore. Like 5 years ago, I think that you could have made that argument. I made that argument like 5 years ago because it would be like people with like 1 like or like people with like 6 views. And I was like, why the f- is Sargon making a whole video on this woman? But nowadays, you're like seeing it pop up more and more and more. It's not necessarily related to trans people, but there was that fucking professor that just got fired for showing like a picture of Muhammad because a girl complained and she said it was like offensive. Like even though he had a trigger warning on the class. Like a lot of this shit is like showing up more and more and more, and it's making its way into all the mainstream media networks. I don't think you just hand wave it as just Twitter.
Well, is it all the mainstream media or is it just Fox News?
Fox News is the largest cable news network in the.
So I'm saying
if it's covered on Fox News, it's probably going to be covered on other parts of the media as well. Yes, and even if it was just Fox News, that is the mainstream media. Yes.
No, wait.
But
No, let me
all
finish.
of
Let me finish my sentence. Like the reason why, like, I think that I don't mean like I feel like this is a little bit overblown because if it's not actually translating to like people voting and to people taking like legitimate action, then I have a hard time saying like I think in the trans case, like that is more easy to say like, oh yeah, like the anti-trans legislation is at least attempting to be passed. I think a lot more successfully in the UK than the United States. I don't think in the United States are making a lot of headway. Like they're introducing bills, but they're not like actually.
Well, I last year I think it was 25. It was like 25 or 30 anti-trans legislation bills passed in like red states, and I know for a fact in terms of introduction. It was like 140 all last year. So like
by passed, do you mean like they just passed the House or like the governor signed them into law? Because that's another thing people don't understand.
I think 25 were signed into law either by governor's signature or because a conservative supermajority was able to override governor veto in those red states. I think at least 25. I'd have to go back and do my homework. It's been a minute since I've looked at it. But as far as like the United States too, one thing, and I was trying to remember who it was before I spoke, but it doesn't really matter who it was. But I know when on a federal level, when the Equality Act was being proposed, it was either 2021 or 2020. It had to have been 2020. It had to have been 2020 because Republicans were still in the majority. There was a Republican either from Alabama or Oklahoma who cited J.K. Rowling's arguments, like her turf positions, as part of his objection to the Equality Act, which would enshrine LGBTQ protections, additional protections into federal law. So she's certainly having an influence even in the United States. I don't know about what's going on in the United Kingdom, but in a way that is affecting how people vote. And
that's probably coming from social media, right?
Yeah.
And so I assume that everyone here believes that or recognizes that over the last, at the very least, 80 years of American history, liberal institutions like colleges have had, the students are much more radical, but then a decent amount of those ideas bleed into major public opinion. Not just because those people grow up and enter, life, but because they have an influence. Those places and their beliefs get spread through newspapers and whatever, and more people adopt them. And the same is what happens on social media. People, we see like a huge bulk of it here, but we're seeing more and more a lot of the things that we considered radical a few years ago bleeding into the mainstream. And you can't just say, well, that's the good things. No, that's also the bad and the extreme as well. Especially now, we're in a completely different climate where a lot more extreme social pressure to adopt ideas is being put forth.
Yeah, but here's the thing. There's a stronger relationship between politically active conservatives and those who are active on social media. So like this is an example. Yes, social media can be an effective way, like in a way that translates to, actual political advocacy. But for Republicans, like so you are not going to be able to find a sitting member of Congress in the Democratic Party who believes that trans women have periods. You can find sitting Republicans in Congress who will cite the tweets of TERFs. There is a very close relationship and this great, beautiful, very effective pipeline. It's very disturbing, but it's there between outspoken conservatives on social media and their congressional advocates. That doesn't really exist on the left. Not in the way. So I think
Or let's
actually,
even, just as an example, I'm pretty sure that like a lot of the current modern day conspiracies spun out of QAnon, which was on obscure social media. That came from 4chan before it infected places like Facebook. That's completely internet driven. Yeah.
I hear you, but that's also again on the right. So what I'm trying to point out to you and Lycan is it's not that social media doesn't have an influence, but you're focused on the social media influence of fringe progressives in the mainstream. What you should be focused on in terms of social media influence is conservative on conservative. That's where you're seeing a much stronger parallel there.
I disagree because
QAnon. No, look at the examples we just cited. QAnon is a right-wing example.
I'm going to give you some left-wing examples.
Okay.
So a lot of corporations are adopting these conscious language policies, right? And we're seeing a lot of words getting blacklisted. Because
you mean deny listed? Go ahead.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of these words. Colleges are adopting it as well, and that's all something that came from Twitter, social media, SJW spaces. And the level of extremism to which we're seeing those, I have seen companies that are trying to make it so you can't say anything vaguely war related, and these are companies that are supporting the defense industry.
I would need to see examples of that, because the one that popped up like a couple of months ago was about this one college campus that was supposedly trying to take out, and Aaron, I think you and I had a conversation about this, so you might have a fresher memory on it than I do, but there was this scandal about, oh my god, this college is trying to take certain words out of the it
was
couldn't be
it
published.
Stanford or Harvard? Were there?
And it turns out it was like a fucking legal club, and they just proposed that, hey, this might make the space more inclusive. It was not part of any sort of faculty policy or administration policy. It was again blown wildly out of proportion by conservatives.
It's not yet, but you give it I'm speaking to the companies that I'm familiar with. There grows the pressure to adopt these things, and then there's the social ostracization, the like extremist aspect of leftist thought, where it's like if you don't get in line, you are bigoted, you are whatever for disagreeing with it, and we're having the conversations against it. Like I've done it at my own company, where I've entered these groups to be engaged in the conversation, and any form of pushback is met with the most abhorrent claims about your character, even in the workplace.
I have a question. Like, out of curiosity, do you think like there's any times where a reaction like that is warranted, like at all, or do you think the reaction is never warranted?
I mean, there can be, but I say that when I push back on the military thing, like the thing was you're being insensitive, and I'm sorry, this happened like 2 years ago, but the reaction to it was pretty checked in comparison to the criticism I gave.
No, but I'm at, what, can you give us an example of like, or can you be more specific about that example, or no, sorry. Hey, I have it. Can you give us an example where it is warranted, where, oh, somebody does this action and people are rightfully like, oh, you're a bigot, you're whatever, like, you're a bad
sure.
person.
Yeah, sure. If someone was like, when it comes to using the F slur, I can't think of a corporate example at the moment, but when someone talks about the F slur, and they're like, hey, I think I should be able to say this. No, actually, because then I'd say the rational way to react to that would be to say, hey, you just have to understand that like the root of that is that the F slur, is pejorative for homosexuals, and to use that still kind of continues the idea that, being gay is bad, and that's why we don't say that.
Okay, when is the line drawn too far, in your opinion? Do you think you can give me some sort of like marker for when our people are taking it too far?
Give me a minute to think.
Okay.
While he's thinking, Pixie,
Hi.
you're very utilitarian build, right?
Oh yeah, I'm way too utilitarian pilled.
If
I
I
need
could
to.
prove to you that this social exclusion that you're doing for certain people increases their likelihood to spread fake news, would you back down that claim?
Well, I don't even disagree with that. I don't even think that like social exclusion is the way to go about most things. So but I just think what I do think is that sometimes people swing the pendulum too far the other way, where it's like, oh, we should never call out somebody for their bad beliefs because that might make them more radical. And I feel like we just have to find some sort of middle ground where we can be like, no, you are being like, a little bit bigoted, but like that's part of life. Like we all like
I think
learn,
the
we all like, make mistakes, like we all like have like
I think the
like
problem
I
right now
really,
is no one is calling out anybody for bigoted behavior anymore. Now we're calling people out for like ghost proxies of behavior that might be bigoted. So like whether or not you use some computer jargon becomes like a fight. Like, do we have blacklist and whitelist or master slave terminology anymore? And if you fight against that, it's because you're racist or you're white supremacist. I think the problem is that like by and large, I think even most conservatives agree that like bigoted behavior is shitty. Like if somebody's like, I got fired from my job, and it's like, why? Well, because I called somebody the F slur. People are like, yeah, of course you got fired. You're a fucking moron. Like I don't think very many people are going to support you there. But the problem is going to be like in like the esoteric slang we use, or like the terminology and shit, or fighting over stuff like that. I think that's where the issues start to come in.
Well, did Lycan ever think of an answer?
No, actually, I don't think I can, because I think there are going to be very rare circumstances where that's warranted, and those are usually going to be someone actually being a bigot.
And like, and I'll say
think
this
that's-
for the future, just if something comes to mind, because I am open to this. I'll just say for my part, I see a closer, more effective relationship between online conservative activism and their political advocacy in like state legislatures and on the bench and stuff like that. The thing that based on the evidence that I see right now, I think you and Steven are entirely too concerned about the fringe left. You're stepping over a dollar for the sake of a nickel, because the real relationship there, like QAnon, opposition to the Equality Act, or the bevy of anti-trans legislation that's being proposed in red states and successfully passed very often. That's an indication of a close relationship between online, like social media, being weaponized by conservatives. I think it is much less frequent and much less pervasive and much less successful on the left. I just don't think that relationship is there. However,
True. Like what you're
however,
like,
well, hang on. I was going to say, however, if you have examples of like where Democrats have been heavily influenced by online progressive activism or whatnot, I'm open to it. And certainly if it's in a bad way, but right now I just don't see
Democrats aren't influenced by it because it's not politically popular. It's just f***ing the left over. But they all think that they're like the saviors of the left. That's the issue. We're not going to be able to find examples of that because Democrats want to win elections, right? But like if I was to give you an example of that, then the biggest example would be BLM. Right? A lot of those riots were driven off of misinformation. All of Kyle Rittenhouse was driven off of 100% misinformation about Jacob Blake, right? A lot of the BLM thought that cops are indiscriminately out here murdering black people, right? If you ask an average BLM person like, hey, how many unarmed black men are killed by a cop every year? They're probably gonna say, I don't know, maybe like 1,000, maybe 5,000. The answer is like 13, right? So like, and a lot of that stuff relating to BLM and socialism was political cyanide for politicians. And I know, Ruminate, I know you've heard the call of at least one, he was either senator or House representative, that was complaining, that was bitching to other Democrats like, hey,
Sure.
this shit is destroying
Andrew
my
Clyde,
district. Yeah, people calling me, asking questions about if we're going to be a socialist party, or people supporting the insane riots and shit, or people making information about this. Like, that shit was all driven by social media, and it had massive electoral consequences for Democrats, in my opinion.
And maybe that's the bigger issue, is that like these things
Biden was
are.
saying like, he's not pro defund the police. Like when he was asked about stuff like that, he said like that's a fringe position that I don't hold. I don't even
Right,
know
but
that.
Yeah, but that doesn't seem like a fringe position when we've got the largest riots in the history of all of the United States that were largely driven by Twitter, because that's where BLM came from, was Twitter.
And so
You
to
don't
the
think that
to the
part
point,
of the riots, like the reason like why like these started happening was a direct response from like George Floyd and like seeing the brutality in that area?
Yeah, the
response-
BLM protests.
The BLM protests being driven by just one man being killed like that was
No,
not
but I'm
rational. It was
saying-
largely.
Okay. What I was trying to say is that I think after, that spread across media and like it did, like TikTok, Twitter, whatever platforms, like people like came together as like basically a response to seeing that brutality and also acknowledging brutality in their own neighborhoods. Not necessarily like, oh, like I like not just Twitter, if that makes sense. Like Twitter did help spread what happened with George Floyd, but it wasn't like Twitter by itself, if that makes sense.
No,
Sure, but
I
the
think
Arab
social media
Spring-
was the largest push for why the BLM riots got as big as they did. It wouldn't have been just like mainstream media catching it. I think it was a lot of the social media had driven it as well, for sure.
Steven, I take your point, but the reason there, again, to me, that's a bit different. I'm not contesting the fact that social media can be an effective way of galvanizing a social movement or spreading misinformation or both. But what I mean is, my understanding was you were complaining about the views or positions of fringe leftists being considered mainstream by those in power. And I'm saying, and maybe I'm misrepresenting you, maybe I misunderstood. I don't see that that's the case, because even the examples you're citing where the leaders of the Democratic Party are actually pushing back against it. No, I'm not. I don't support defund the police. Even like people like AOC and Rashida.
Yeah,
Squad.
I'm sorry, let me try to say this one more time, but maybe I'm not being clear, okay? I'm not saying that the mainstream Democratic Party is like this. They're not, because these positions are electorally toxic. But so many people support them online that not only are Republicans able to make it seem like most Democrats support this, Democrats have to spend time fighting against their own. Biden has to make statements saying we don't support the riots. Bernie Sanders has to take to Twitter and mainstream media and say, hey guys, on social media, you need to f*** off. The way that you support me is cancerous as f***. That Democrats are not only having to fight wars against Republicans, they have to fight against their own. And all of these like social media platforms are also spinning off people that are incredibly anti-democratic establishment. Look at the entirety of the Intercept. Look at the Brianna Joy Gray person. Look at like some of these like big leftist podcasts that spend more time. Look at Kyle Kalinske. Look at Jimmy Dore. Like these people have like decent followings that are, look at how much of the Young Turks is getting destroyed these days because Anna Kasparian and Cenk are kind of somewhat moving to a more mainstream Democratic position, and they're getting hammered for it.
Well, I hear you, but to me that goes back to, again, like, okay, like, I hear what you're saying, that there is enough of it that the right and Republicans can weaponize it successfully so that they can redirect it so that Democrats like Biden, Andrew Clyde, whoever, or Jim Clyburn, not Andrew Clyde, Jim Clyburn, the guy who was speaking out against, defund the police and how it screwed us in elections. Mm-hmm. But to me, it kind of goes back to, do you think that that's really a reflection of how popular it is, or just the ability of Republicans to successfully cherry pick and blow very small things wildly out of proportion? Because I don't see an antidote for that. I think as long as you
I agree. That Republicans try to blow things up, okay? But when you try to blow something up that a lot of people don't believe in, I think it can come back to bite you in the ass. But when it seems like there's a lot of people supporting it, I think it's a lot different. So that one tweet with the person saying, I'm a trans woman who's experiencing her first period, that tweet should have like 100 likes. And if it did, and somebody brought it up, you'd be like, bro, this is fringe random shit on the internet. Who the fuck cares? But it doesn't have almost 100 likes. It's got almost 100,000 likes. And when stuff like that starts to appear, I don't know if it's as fair for you to say Republicans are cherry picking anymore, because a lot of these positions end up massively popular on places like Twitter. They end up going over to places like Facebook, where a lot more boomers are, and then they end up making their way onto Fox News. And a lot of these things that originate on social media, look at the whole Valencia thing, end up making their ways into mainstream political conversations. And I think that's dangerous. And they only get there because so many people online support it. If it was just one or two people, then yeah, I think it would be like really easy. I'm just thinking of like my own personal experience. If I'm arguing with somebody like, well, what about the time this happened? I'm like, bro, nobody cares about that. There's like 3 people. I can't answer that way anymore. I have to disown like half my fucking political affiliation online before I can even have a a conversation.
Do you think that if it were 100 likes, one last question, I'm so sorry. Do you think if that tweet in question only had 100 likes, do you think that Republicans wouldn't try to weaponize it?
No, Republicans would try, but they would be less successful.
But that was my follow-up question. Do you think they could be successful? Like, do you think they really need fodder? Do you really think they need much in order to successfully weaponize?
Yes. I think it matters. Okay. I think it does matter.
When these things come up, these content creators, independent journalists, and then often mainstream journalists, on like things like MSNBC, come out and defend it. So they fuel that fire as well. So sure, the Republicans are taking something and blowing it up, but then our side does a horribly shit job. Think of how long BLM was embraced. BLM didn't start getting the call outs until we almost lost a ton of elections. or people did lose
Like,
elections.
can you give me an example of MSNBC supporting the like period stuff, out of curiosity, or the
Or even the
trans
BLM
stuff?
riots or anything
Because
like
like
that.
from my understanding, the mainstream support, like what this is also separate. The mainstream support for BLM is supporting the whole idea that like, hey, Black lives do matter, and hey, you know what? There is a serious problem with policing. Not necessarily going straight up to
No, hold on.
police.
That was
Some
not.
people were saying
No,
that, but
no,
that
no, no,
wasn't
no, no,
like
no.
the broad sentiment.
That was not the mainstream BLM position. The mainstream BLM position was that cops were indiscriminately murdering black people for absolutely no fucking reason, and we needed to disband policing across the entire United States. That was the mainstream BLM position. Defund the police. Defund the police.
Okay,
ACAB.
maybe I'm just consuming vastly different media from you guys. Because whenever I saw ACAB or defund the police, it was always on fucking Twitter, and maybe one political pundit out of five in MSNBC or in CNN mentioning it, while the other four were like talking about like, oh no, like, you know, we definitely need police and structural reform. Like, how do you guys think the police are going to like handle like these huge disruptions and all this
Yeah,
stuff?
I that was my experience too, because I like, again, mainstream politicians were supporting BLM, but they were simultaneously pushing back on ACAB and defund the police. So I don't think it was the mainstream position of BLM to defund the police and ACAB. Otherwise, AOC, Jim Clyburn, Joe Biden, whoever else would not have offered any sort of even rhetorical support for Black Lives Matter if those
Sure.
associations were there.
I don't think,
I,
Hold
again,
on.
because they
Wait,
were so
as someone that was
electorally
actually at the protests, this was a pretty big thing.
Yeah,
that
no.
people-
At the protests and on social media, they were. On mainstream media, they were airing those opinions. I think that the establishment still generally pushed back on it, but the opinions were still making it to mainstream media. And you could, as Republicans, it was very easy to point to these people and go like, look, they're trying to defund the police, because it was at every fucking rally. And on social media, those call-outs were huge.
It just seems like whatever fringe position there might be.
How is it
there-
fringe?
Okay,
You're talking about 25 million people across, a year and a half. I don't know.
The
Okay.
largest riots in U.S. history. How many billions of dollars of property damage? How many people killed? Like, how many things spun off of it? Like,
when I say it's fringe, I'm saying that the vast majority of like media and establishment does not agree with it. And I assume, like, even though like Twitter has like all these echo chambers and a lot of people on it, if the vast majority of people are not supporting it, it seems like most of the time there is a correlation with politicians not supporting it. It seems like
you
if there
literally
was a-
had we got the legendary shot of the CNN guy saying mostly peaceful protests with the fucking car dealership on fire in the background. We had
That's
people
not
like,
wrong. Is he wrong? The vast majority of BLM protests were
you're
peaceful, no?
never mind. Was he wrong? I don't know how to engage with that.
Well, no,
I just
the
told
If
only-
you
that
can't
it's not
see
wrong. Yeah,
how
it's
that's like a
wrong.
defining picture of like the BLM riots, is he wrong? Like, even if he's right, it looks so
I
horrible.
just told you it's bad optics, and we agree. But I'm saying, is he actually lying or
No, he
misreporting?
wasn't
No, he's
wrong,
not
like-
lying. Of course he's not
Right?
lying. Sure, of course he's not lying.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's bad optics, but he didn't actually like report anything. Yeah, it's horrible optics of a burning building in your background while you're trying to tell people that like, yeah, this shit is peaceful, guys. I promise. Like, obviously, that's going to be incongruent in the eyes of the viewer, but it's not actually indicative of reality.
You know what else isn't indicative of reality? The vast majority of KKK people weren't involved in lynchings. I could come out and say that. The vast majority of KKK people probably didn't even want to do anything bad to black people. It was just part of their community shit that they got along with, right? I'm pretty sure lynchings were almost completely non-existent. I think from the 1920s onwards.
They gave Christmas presents to some people, right?
What?
what does this have to
The
do
KKK
with?
even gave some people Christmas presents, right?
Was he wrong?
Oh.
You know he wasn't
I-
wrong. Wait. You know that he wasn't wrong when he said that, right? You know that he wasn't wrong when he said that, right?
Yeah, he was wrong.
I'm confused because I feel like we're trying to argue about like the majority. How do most people feel about this?
Okay, no,
And
stop.
then-
I can lay this on in 2 seconds. This is what I'm arguing, okay? When a fringe position comes up, a fringe position should remain a fringe position. When a fringe position comes up, everybody in love should go, that's retarded, and walk away from it. But that's not what happens. What happens is a fringe position comes up, and at the very least right now in social media, it gets overwhelming support. And then Republicans come up and they go, look at that thing. We need to make legislation. Our politicians need to talk about this. It needs to go on Fox News. And on the left, you want to go, that's a fringe position. But everybody on the right is looking at you like you're an insane person because it might be a fringe position that's advocated for by a few amount of people, but it's defended by a ton. That's the issue. What has to be removed is the widespread defense of it.
Okay, how much do you consider widespread defense? Because in my opinion, or how I view things, we're gonna say widespread defense, I'm thinking, okay, the majority, almost a majority, et cetera, et cetera. If this is like 1/5 of people, like that's not the widespread majority. That's a vocal minority, but that's not the widespread majority.
People don't function like this, right? The reality is that cops killing black people is a non-issue in the history of black people in the United States. In terms of all of the problems that the black community faces, it is a blip that's not even fucking worth discussing. But it dominated headlines for years, right? So the idea of whether or not something is a majority or a minority doesn't mean anything. If I could show you one violent cop killing a week, 52 black people killed a week, and it still wouldn't matter to the overall African American community. That's not how people's brains work. That's not how people function in the real world.
Okay, the reason why cop killings are seen as an important issue is because when we look at it in like proportion to, let's say, other racial groups like white people, it seems to be like a great disproportionate amount, right? When we talk about like this broader context that does affect the majority of the black community historically, like let's say corrupt institutions, like corrupt justice institutions, well then yeah, that also plays a part in the conversation. The reason why like those things are big or impactful is because they do like, you know, impact the vast majority of black people's lives in one way or another.
No. It does. It only affects
not that person directly, but somebody within their family.
No, that's not true. How many
friends?
No, that's not true. Most black people.
You're tell me historically, like segregation and like the results.
No, stop.
On drugs didn't.
You just pivoted. You just pivoted so hard. If you want to talk about segregation, that's fine. But the average black person doesn't even have a friend of a friend of a friend that's been killed by a cop. That is not true. I think white progressives think that like every other black person knows 3 people murdered by the cops.
Okay, I didn't say just killed by a cop. What I said is that this plays a conversation or a part in a broader conversation when it comes to corrupt justice institutions, okay? Of policing in general. Okay?
Even corrupt,
That's why
even
it plays a part.
No, but that first of all, no, even if all of the criminal justice system was okay except for cops killing people, that would still get the same amount of media play because that's the most sensational. People are not looking at this as like an overwhelming like cognitive like neural process with like, oh yes, I'm analyzing this as part of a broader issue, blah 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 blah. Like even in terms of issues that black people face, the criminal justice system is probably a minority of an issue compared to economic anxiety, compared to downstream things of things like Jim Crow, compared to downstream things of things like slavery. Like these are other problems, like the current like geographic areas that like black people are in and the economic opportunities available to them and all of that. These are going to be way bigger problems than the criminal justice system being slightly unfair to black people compared to white people. It's going to be a way bigger problem.
What did you think about the like Stop Asian Hate movement? Because yes, there was a spike in anti-Asian hate crimes and stuff like that, but overall, in terms of like the actual amount of Asian Americans that faced, it was probably a very, very small number. Do you think that that's like a useless cause?
I have never ever said that any of these things are useless causes.
I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm asking, but do you think so? Just because
no, I don't think it's. I don't think it's useless. Just like I don't think it's useless to talk about black people being killed by the cops. But if Asian people started rioting and caused $50 billion in property damage across the United States because of Asian killings, I'd probably think, yeah, that was a little bit overhyped.
You make it sound like BLM is only composed of like black Americans. My understanding is that BLM has a lot of fucking white people.
When did I say that BLM was composed of only black Americans?
It was her phrasing that made her think that. Yeah. So no, but. Yeah,
no, hold on. What I mean, the Asian hate protests can have white people and black people in them too if they want. This has nothing to do with the composition of the people. Wait, hold on. This whole conversation. No, the whole
BLM like black people did or something like that.
No, the whole conversation right now is social media. Social media is dominated by white people, not black people.
I don't disagree. It's true. I guess I think that the biggest contention is that I think you put more importance on like letting your opposition kind of set the terms of engagement and like insofar as like how you need to construct your own rhetoric and messaging. And to a certain extent, you kind of have no choice to, especially when the right is really good at like weaponizing these like wedge issues and pushing them forward into the mainstream on Tucker Carlson, on like the largest conservative conservative network like Fox News. But to, you know, I feel like it's short-sighted to always try to placate that because the right will always weaponize everything, no matter how on point your messaging will be.
And I want to add to that real quick.
Some ammunition, of course.
Sure. Before Renee goes, you're just wrong. You can weaponize anything, but it's not going to be irrespective of the size of the movement you're weaponizing. It's going to matter how many people support it. If I can show you video after 100,000 like tweet after 100,000 like tweet of somebody supporting something, I'm going to get way more traction criticizing that thing than I am of like a random video of a random nobody like that has no support on the internet.
So listen, I just want to concede there that yes, I do agree with you that how fringe a fringe position is. I mean, at least on paper, I have to imagine that it does matter, that there is, you know, it is easier to blow wildly out of proportion a 100,000 liked tweet as opposed to 1,000. I do agree with you that it has to play a factor. But I don't think, number one, I don't think it would stop, and I know you conceded this, that it wouldn't stop Republicans from doing it. And I don't think it would stop Republicans from successfully doing it. As far as Aaron's broader point about setting the terms of engagement, it's funny, I actually made a note. This is something else I want to talk to you about based on a conversation you had either yesterday or the day before with a guy who was asking you about dog whistles is what it was. And I've heard you say this before on, now you're saying it about dog whistles. You said it about the word Nazi and fascism and everything else, but about how the left should just abandon certain words. And it's not that I don't think you're wrong, but I'm interested in your views on this because I do think that there's a risk here, a serious risk of allowing the right to dictate terms of engagement. I don't think there is a word or a phrase or anything else that the right can't successfully weaponize. Jesus, look what they did with critical race theory, of all things.
Yeah, but it's only because people in prominent positions sometimes, maybe not politicians, but would defend it. Do you know how much airplay on fucking even my mom sent me that clip of that crazy lunatic Harvard professor that was in front of it wasn't Matt Gaetz, I don't think. It might have been.
It was Josh Hawley. You're thinking of Kiara Bridges.
Right,
yeah.
Jesus, like, holy Christ. You know how smug she was about, like, oh, you're talking about a birthing person? Let the record reflect that you're being transphobic when you say that pregnancy is a woman's issue. And, like, everybody on the left was jerking themselves off about how much she owned it. Bro, that shit got so much airplay. There's a Harvard professor saying this insane fucking shit. Like, I don't know. I think those optics matter. And I think that seeing people in those positions say shit like that, I think it matters.
I'm not saying, listen, so what's funny is I was one of those leftists jerking that off because I love the fact that for once we had a witness in front of a Republican Congress that wasn't demure and, just a wallflower. Because you even see this with, like, Attorney General Merrick Garland when or Dr. Fauci when he's in front of Congress all the time, where he's constantly being talked over by bad faith Republican senators and Congress people all the time, and he has to be super polite and like, well, no, Senator, no, I'm this isn't a conspiracy. No, I did not do gain of function research. Meanwhile, they're being as egregiously hostile and bad faith as they can possibly be to get dunks. But everybody representing the Democratic side of the aisle or the left, they have to be super polite, super on point at all times. They can't be too smug. They can't be too weak. They have to be some sort of Goldilocks thing in the middle.
Sure, but I think it's working. And I think that we just have to keep pushing and we have to keep fighting. The areas that the left are losing right now, I think, are the areas where we are systematically disadvantaged. Okay, like I would have to look up, but aren't our presidents becoming more and more and more popular? How many votes did Hillary Clinton win by? Was it 4 million?
3 million.
3 million votes? How many votes did Biden win by, right?
8 million.
Yeah, 8, Jesus, right? So, I think it can work. I think we can win. The Republicans made a deal with the devil, and now they're paying the cost for it right now with the Trump shit. I know that we have trouble with, like, governors and stuff, like areas where we're systematically disadvantaged. But the ways that we're losing are in arguably some of the least democratic areas, right? So we just have to keep pushing, stay on point with the message. I know that it sucks that we have to hold ourselves to higher standards of Republicans, but I think that it does show. I think it does show over time. And just the losses that we take optically from progressives that want to torpedo the everything. I just don't think it's worth it to be so doomer and hopeless everything. Yeah.
Well, but here's my question though. But like, I guess, and maybe you need to think about it and get back with me or whatnot. But not to put you on the spot. But to Aaron's point, at what point do you stand your ground? Because if it's simply a matter of you need to basically give ground on anything that the right can successfully weaponize, we'll just be in constant retreat rhetorically.
No, don't give ground on what they can weaponize. Pick your battles and fight over things that are important. Trans people should have access. Here's an undeniable point. If you are an adult, if you're 18 or older, you should have access to medication and shit if you're trans. Full stop. That's a point that everybody can fight, and that's a hill you can die on. But trying to die on whether or not minors or trans women in college should be able to play in the NCAA, that's like such a fringe minority point. You don't have to die on that hill. Find the important battles, stick it out there, fight and die on those hills, and people respect you for it. But like taking the really fringe positions or like letting like the loud crazies on Twitter dictate those, I just think it's cancerous. I think you have to move away from it.
I hear you, but I'm also referring to, because again, it's not quite the same thing. Again, I was making reference to like how you said that the left should abandon criticism of dog whistles. You either said it yesterday or the day before. And I've heard you say about like words like Nazi and fascist and other things as well. And so I'm not just talking about policy positions. Like, yes, I understand that you think that the left and Democrats should die on the hill, rightly so, of trans rights on substantive issues. But I mean, in terms of the rhetoric in terms of the words and phrases that they use to try to advocate for their positions, the right is very, very good at negatively loading these terms. So words like what, or phrases like white privilege, again, critical race theory, woke, Nazi, fascist, all these things. And if we just give up the phrases and rhetoric that the right can weaponize against us, we will constantly be retreating on the rhetorical game, don't you think? And if you don't think that, do you have any idea of
What
where?
do you think I'm telling you to advocate, or to retreat from? That's an important battle.
What do you mean? I mean, I think that successfully, I think that labeling, when you, for example, fascist, that's one that I've disagreed with you before. I think that there's nothing wrong with, I think it's important to call out fascist behavior, fascist actions. I think it's important. I think that's when President Biden referred to, the MAGA cult as semi-fascist or quasi-fascist in that speech.
Wait, did he call them semi-fascist or quasi-fascist, or did he say they have problems because they're denying the results of the Democratic election?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm 99% sure that either in that speech or in some sort of public speech thereafter, he used the phrase semi-fascist to refer to those who, again, denied the results of free and fair elections, who tried to overthrow the Capitol, blah, 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 all these things. I think that's good. Now, it may be controversial, and of course, and you know that the right spun this, because I think you've talked about it before. It was all over Tucker Carlson and, Laura Ingraham and all these people, Ben Shapiro, everybody in mainstream and social media on the right. I can't believe that the president of the United States tarred half the country as semi-fascist, even though that's exactly not what he said. He was referring to he very explicitly said this, a small percentage of the Republican Party. As a matter of fact, he probably gave them more credit than what they deserved, because MAGA is pretty popular with Republicans, or at least was at the time. But he was still tarred and feathered for it. I still think it was good for him to do, because it is semi-fascist and it is dangerous. It is a threat to the Republic. And the idea that you can't call it that, you have to mince your words because a bad faith right-wing media operation can successfully weaponize it against you, that's bullshit. Otherwise, we just can't call anything out. Then you got to go the Lex Friedman approach and just, Biden's supposed to be a unifier and just kind of let things go. And guys, maybe, golly gee, you don't like breaking into the Capitol.
Why not just call out the thing? Why not just call it the thing itself?
We give labels for reasons, right? I mean,
yeah, but the problem why we give the label of fascist is to thought terminate. Most people on the left can't tell you what a fascist is. So you can't say we give labels to things so they help us understand. They don't. Fascist means bad, right? But election denier, like that, it's specific. It's calling out an exact negative behavior. And I can point to Donald Trump and go, he denies elections. And a lot of Republicans go, yeah, fuck it, I do deny the election. Okay, cool, let's talk about it. But the fascist shit is just thought terminating. It's not helping anybody anywhere. I agree with you also, by the way, that Trump is a fucking fascist. And I think a lot of the people that support him do lean fascist. I don't even disagree with you. But I understand what fascist means.
No, I know you don't agree. I know.
But here's the thing. This is the issue, too. One, most people on the left can't tell you why fascism is bad. And two, most people on the right that support Donald Trump, if you explain to them the tenets of fascism without calling it fascism, they probably wouldn't even think it's bad. Like a strong authority figure that harkens back to the past and draws up images of when your nation used to be great, going back to traditions when men and women, gender roles were more traditional. We didn't cuck ourselves out to fucking minorities and the globo homos that are trying to ruin the fucking country and all that shit. Like, you can invoke a ton of fascist ideology and political organization that they probably say, yeah, this is fine. I firmly believe that at least 55% of Trump supporters, if you could explain fascism without using the word fascism, they'd be all for it. I want to get rid of the FDA. I want to suspend all these government organizations. I think that all of this shit is bullshit. Here's a statement I'll make. Anybody that supported Pence overturning the election is a bona fide fascist. Full stop. Right. There's no other excuse for it, right? So I mean, yeah, what do I get by saying that, right? I can't argue with you about that. If most of these guys would support fascism, if they knew what it was, I'm not going to sit there and argue about it. I'm going to argue why it's important to support free and fair elections, why it's important to support the democratic right to choose your leaders and all that shit. That's what I have to fight for, I think.
I'm going to chew on that, and I would like you to have in the back of your mind, because I would like to revisit this conversation later, because I still don't know quite where you stand, and maybe you don't either. Maybe it's just a gray area in terms of when and where the left or Democrats, in terms of phrasing, rhetoric, labels, and it could be anything. I threw out examples: Nazi, fascist, dog whistle, critical race theory, woke, whatever it is, where we don't cede ground and say, no, actually, this is a good label or good phrase that encapsulates the issue. And yes, the right wing is going to try to weaponize it, but no, blah, blah. Instead of just ceding ground to Aaron's point, when and where rhetorically and in terms of messaging do you stop allowing the
I mean,
right
like
to
calling
dictate the terms
January
of
6th an
engagement?
attempted coup d'etat, given what we know about the Oathbreakers now, I think that's fine, 100%. Saying Trump is like undemocratic, saying that Trump is an election denier, I think that's fine. Saying a lot of Republicans are anti-vaxxers, I think that's fine. I think these can all be defended. I would fight on the facts and I would fight for the labels there. But
The problem is that when you have the town square, going back to social media, when our side engages with these things, they're not having the conversation the way that we're talking about having the conversation. It's like, nah, he is a fucking fascist, fuck you, and that's it. That's the end. There's no conversation, there's no discussion, there's no trying to explain or reach across the aisle. So when CRT comes up, mainstream media did push back on the CRT shit. I'm sorry, they did push in defense of the CRT shit. There weren't the conversations happening in the town square about CRT is, this thing that is a framework, should be discussed in college. People were talking about it as there's nothing wrong with it, or being unwilling to. It's not conceding ground to say, yeah, it's kind of crazy that teacher's teaching what they're teaching. That conversation didn't happen on our side. And then when we don't have that conversation, it's not, or having that conversation wouldn't be ceding ground. It would be just accepting, yeah, that is bad. But when we look at it as ceding ground, then it becomes us versus them. We double down, or we refuse to engage, and we make the problem worse. We allow it to fester. We allow the right to go on. That's just as bad as giving them ammunition.
I'm sympathetic to this idea that like Twitter is the town square, maybe functionally, but I always there's a part of me that's like, well, you can't buy the town square, and like Elon Musk just bought Twitter, so I don't know to what extent we can look at social media platforms and say that that is necessarily where the public conversations about these things is going to happen. But then it just sounds wrong to say that they're going to happen in person or like at what forums and stuff like that people don't even attend. So I have no fucking clue.
I mean, but it does, like, that Steven, your friend, right? That, she had no problems with you whatsoever. And then at some point,
oh, my normie check friend, Jesus Christ.
She got engaged, either saw a
Via
post.
Sean King, kill me.
Yeah, like she got a little engaged, and it was like, okay, cool. More people are going to see these now. I think she was more socially media active, probably.
I have. Can you clarify this? I have no idea what the hell.
Sorry,
you're
I made a
talking
joke
about.
a long time ago that like there was a friend that I used to hook up with that I met in California who was like completely disconnected from all this online shit. And it was just funny chatting with her about like political stuff because she was like my quote unquote like my normie check. Like this is like hard into my lefty arc, and I would like ask her like, do you know what a tanky is? And she'd be like, I have no idea what any of this shit is. And like people that like support like Stalin and stuff, and she's like, wasn't he the bad guy in World War II? Or not, I'm sorry, not in World War II, but wasn't he the bad guy after like the Cold War or whatever? Like it was like she had like very basic takes, and I was like, oh okay, yeah. She's like, this is like my normie check on shit. But then I noticed that on her Instagram over time, like stories started to come out where she was like reblog. What do you call it on Instagram? Where you share in your story?
It's like a retweet. Basically.
Yeah, whatever. Like shit, like with like Sean King and stuff that I thought was like kind of funny. I think we got into one argument about like Bernie versus Biden once, and then I noticed that one day I was like just blocked on her Instagram account. I had no idea why. And I'm guessing it's probably because she started to like Instagram story or whatever more and more of like that Sean King shit. She probably saw something of me arguing or something at one point. I was like, oh, rip, okay. But like, yeah, I don't know. It seems like that shit started to seep its way into more and more normie conversations where people are starting to know who these people are, and it's not just like fringe Twitter shit anymore. Like it's showing up on other people's stuff. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, as somebody made, I think it might have been, I heard somebody say this recently, it might have been Aristocracy on Connor's new panel. It's interesting to think that some of you, in terms of like how this discourse is leaking into the mainstream, so not only did you appear in a montage in front of Congress, but you're like, in terms of like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, like you are 2 steps removed, or like 2 or 3 steps removed from a former president of the United States who may or may not be the president in 2024. Certainly he'll run. And it's crazy to think about like how the bleeding of these two worlds, like there's no clear divide anymore. The membrane has been penetrated.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah.